Chapter 820. What? Have you forgotten how your sister died? Don't you hate me anymore? Is this the backbone of the Snake Monarch Snake Slave clan? No wonder you can only be slaves, because you can't even stand up. You can only be reptiles forever. The Snake Monarch's eyes burned fiercer, and the whimpers from his mouth became louder. The poisonous snakes lost their minds under the influence of the song of the frightening snake. They bared their fangs and hissed as they attacked Jiang Junling and the black-clothed men around him. Paw! Some of the black-clothed men fired at the approaching poisonous snakes, smashing the huge snake's head. Blood splattered everywhere, but this only enraged their companions even more. More poisonous snakes rushed over, and more black-clothed men fired at the snake formation. Paw, 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 the sound of gunfire was dense and incessant. Jiang Junling had a mocking smile on his face. Why don't you let those poisonous snakes attack me? What? Are you going to let me go? But don't forget, I was the one who forced your sister to die, or are you forced by their feelings and have already given up on the idea of revenge? The Snake Monarch's forehead was dripping with sweat. The veins on his hand that was holding the instrument were bulging, and it was already trembling violently. The music he played was sometimes loud and sometimes soothing. The poisonous snakes sometimes advanced with bloodshot eyes, and sometimes looked around blankly, not knowing what to do. Everyone could see that Fong Wang was very hesitant at this moment. He wanted to kill Jiang Junling, and he had to kill Jiang Junling. Because that was the only way he could avenge his sister. But he couldn't kill Jiang Junling. Jiang Junling had Leah as a hostage, and he knew better than anyone how important Leah was. She was Du Qing's adopted daughter. Although there was the word adopted in her name, Du Qing regarded her as his own. Du Qing and Fong Yan were brothers. Du Qing was the reason why Fong Yan was able to control Flower City. Most importantly, Du Qing went to jail for Leah, and in order to protect Fong Yan, he refused to let go. He clenched his teeth and refused to drag Fong Yan into this mess. Just based on this, Fong Yan owed him a huge favor. Otherwise, would Fong Yan have the chance to run to Beijing to ask for reinforcements? He had been locked up with Du Qing a long time ago. He could hear the concern that Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan had for Leah. He also knew that Bai Lilu also did not want him to do anything that would endanger Leah's life at this time, but his sister was dead. His sister had been poisoned to death by him. Her body was still lying in front of him. Was he going to give up just like that? Was he going to pretend that nothing had happened? He could have taken his revenge. All he needed to do was play this musical instrument to chase those poisonous snakes away, and he would be able to do what he wanted to do. Why couldn't he do that? Leah is a human, your sister is also a human. Jiang Junling was still inciting the Snake Lord's mind. His voice had a seductive charm as he said, "Why is your sister's life inferior to Leah's? Why can't you take revenge for your dead sister? Are you very sad? Are you very desperate? Did you only realize at this time that Fong Yan and I are no different? I use force to use people, but Fong Yan uses feelings. He uses hypocritical affection to manipulate you. What's the difference? Why do you think that Fong Yan values affection more than me? Is it like this? Isn't it more difficult to use emotions to manipulate people's hearts?" Jiang Junling, the Snake Lord, shouted through gritted teeth. He stopped playing, put the musical instrument to his mouth, and said fiercely, "I will let you suffer the pain of 10,000 snakes biting your heart." Jiang Junling shook his head and sighed. "Now that the opportunity is in front of you, you don't dare to do anything. What's the point of saying these threatening words? Aren't you just asking to be humiliated?" "Jiang Junling, don't go too far." Bai Lilu knew that Fong Yan had made a decision. In the end, he still chose Fong Yan and chose to temporarily give up the hatred in his heart. For this man, taking a step forward represented bravery. but taking a step back represented wisdom. He chose wisdom and chose to look at the big picture. Bailey Lu finally understood why Fong Yan valued him so much. Why Fong Yan made him trust him wholeheartedly. You understand what Fong Yan's actions represent. You know that temporarily giving up his hatred is smarter than driving the poisonous snakes to perish together with you. You underestimate him. He is not as idiotic as you think. Bailey Lu bluntly exposed Jiang Junling's evil plan and said, "You don't have to sow dissension in the middle anymore. You want to compare yourself with Fong Yan. Do you deserve it?" Fong Yan gave people the freedom of their bodies and also gave them an independent personality. He treats everyone as a friend and thinks of others wholeheartedly. Putting ourselves in his shoes, as Fong Yan's friends, can't we feel his sincerity? Why did I come all the way here to risk my life for him? Isn't it because I regard him as a friend? Why can Fong Yan even give up the revenge of his sister's murder? It's also because he feels that Fong Yan regards him as a friend. He understands Fong Yan's painstaking efforts, and he also knows the situation Fong Yan needs. Fong Yan is willing to sacrifice for us, and we are also willing to sacrifice for Fong Yan. Because we all know in our hearts that Fong Yan will pay us back in the future. Bailey Lu looked at Jiang Junling and said, "Young Master Jiang, will you pay us back?" Jiang Junling raised his head and thought for a moment, then said, "This question is really difficult for me. Pay us back? I'm sorry, I've never thought of such a complicated question. Because what I can give them, I've given them all a long time ago. Because of their extraordinary background, everything in the world was given to them. Everyone flattered and praised them, and the best treasures revolved around them. Every time he accepted someone's flattery, those people would be so excited that their faces would turn red, as if they had received a great reward. Growing up in such an environment, who would still talk to him about paying them back? He only needed to accept it, because accepting it was already a kind of kindness." Jiang Junling looked at Bailey Lu and said, "All right, now you don't dare to kill me, so what do you want to do next?" Jiang Junling took out a remote control from his pocket and pressed a red button on it. The genetic handcuff on Li Ya's hand immediately beeped as an alarm. Jiang Junling looked at Bailey Lu and said with a smile, "If you can't leave in 2 minutes, this handcuff will explode her into air. You know that state." "All right, it's already been 30 seconds. Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan looked at Bailey Lu, and the Snake Lord also glanced at Bailey Lu from the corner of his eyes. Obviously, when Fong Yan wasn't here, Bailey Lu had become the most decisive person here. "I want to take the 3 of them." Bailey Lu pointed at Fong Yingying, Fong Haohan, and Li Ya, and said, "Otherwise, I'd rather waste time with you." "What a pity." Jiang Junling looked at Li Ya, sighed and said, "She's quite a beautiful girl. Unfortunately, she has to say goodbye to you forever." It was impossible for Jiang Junling to let anyone take Li Ya away. If Li Ya was taken away, it meant that what they had been doing during this period of time had ended in failure. Jiang Junling was a person who didn't like failure. "Jiang Junling, you should know that if Li Ya dies, you won't be able to live. I know you're not afraid of death, but dying in the mouths of these poisonous snakes isn't the best outcome for you, right? You have to think about Fong Yan. Fong Yan is still alive and well. Didn't you agree to be enemies for life? If you die, wouldn't Fong Yan be too lonely alone?" Bailey Lu urged anxiously. He didn't even hesitate to throw Fong Yan out to attract hatred, so that Jiang Junling would always stay awake and not do anything stupid. His eyes stared at the silver remote control in Jiang Junling's hand, looking at the flashing red button on it. He was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. He wanted to rush forward and snatch the remote control, but he was worried that the moment he moved, Jiang Junling would resolutely press the remote control. He knew that Jiang Junling was the disciple of Tao addict Song Zaniang. Tao addict Song Zaniang was the most powerful among the 7 addicts. He was even far more powerful than the so-called 3 secrets and 7 mysteries of Taoism. He was one of the top masters in Huaxia. As the disciple of Song Zaniang, his strength should not be underestimated, right? I know what you're thinking. Jiang Junling stared at Bailey Lu and said in a sharp voice, "Believe me, before you do anything, Li Ye may have died in your hands. I don't want her to die, and I think you guys are the same, so get out of here immediately. Take those disgusting poisonous creatures with you. Otherwise, I won't have time to cancel the bomb button." Screech, it was the sound of a sharp blade piercing through flesh. Jiang Junling's expression was horrified, and he looked incredulous. He looked down and found that a slender sharp knife had pierced through his chest, and the bleeding blade was exposed to the air. How? Jiang Junling's voice was filled with grief and indignation. There was anger, reluctance, and most of all, it was the unbearable betrayal. He had ambitions, he had a great goal, he still had a great revenge to take, and he still had a home to return to. He had a lot of things to do, and he was still so young. But, was it all going to end here? It shouldn't be like this. There really isn't enough time. A man's voice sounded behind him. A big hand reached over, grabbed the remote control from Jiang Junling's hand, and pressed the black cancel button. I never thought. Jiang Junling's mouth was bleeding, and his voice was filled with indescribable grief. It's you. Chapter 821. There was no grace or warmth in that stab. He seemed to be very heartless. It pierced through the back, through the flesh and the gaps in the skeleton, the vital organs, and then revealed the blood-stained blade from the chest. It was a beautiful heart-piercing stab. This was a fatal attack, without any consideration for feelings, and without the slightest bit of mercy. When the knife was stabbed out, it did not think that the person who was stabbed could still live. The person who sneaked up on him stabbed him cleanly, and Jiang Junling also died cleanly. There was not much time to react, and there was not the slightest bit of defense. From the moment he saw the tip of the knife that should not have come out of his chest to the moment his body lost strength and fell to the ground, he could not say much during the process. He could not even complete a sentence of condemnation. Jiang Junling was dead. In the most humiliating way. He was stabbed in the back by the person he trusted the most, and died with a single blow. If the underworld held a celebration to welcome the Mid-Autumn Festival and chose the person who died the most aggrieved death this year, the only person who could defeat Jiang Junling would be his master, Song Zaniang. The only person who could challenge Song Zanyang's throne would probably be Jiang Junling. The master and disciple would firmly occupy the top 2 places on the list of humiliation. Jiang Junling, this was really a person worthy of being written about. He became famous at a young age, his outstanding talent, his heroic appearance, his scandal with Qinitian. He was not the eldest son of the general family, but he suppressed his brother and many of the younger generation of the family to the point where they could not lift their heads. He had never lost before he met Fang Yan, but he had never won after meeting Fang Yan. It had to be admitted that there was indeed a fact in this world that everything had its vanquisher, and a person had its vanquisher. Jiang Junling and Fang Yan were the best examples. An ambitious person of a generation had fallen. His unwillingness, his anger, the blueprint in his heart, his lofty ideals, and his hatred, all turned to dust at this moment. No one cared about what he had thought before, he was already a dead man anyway. The winter wind was a little dry and cold, but the atmosphere was even colder. Not only did Jiang Junling not expect it, but Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan also didn't expect it. Of course, in Bailey Lu's opinion, Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan had low IQs, so they didn't expect it to be possible. However, Bailey Lu didn't expect that the situation would develop like this. This was more exciting and shocking than the Snake Lord poisoning his sister with a fire scorpion. Because they were too surprised, they didn't realize what had happened until Jiang Junling's body fell on the beach. Leah, who had removed the danger of the jean handcuffs exploding, forgot to escape. Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan, who were captured, forgot to counterattack. Bai Lilu forgot to make a move. Those Black G people and those worshippers raised by Jiang Junling actually forgot to take revenge. Kill. The gloomy man's voice rang out again. As he spoke, he had already cut off the neck of a man in black next to him. The long knife drew a beautiful arc in the air, then quickly fell, and stabbed into the neck of a man in black who had just reacted and was ready to fight back. He took the lead, like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, and madly killed the men in black who used to be his companions. Bailey Liu finally reacted and shouted, "Go!" He punched out with both fists, and the two men in black who were holding Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan raised their guns and wanted to fight back. Their heads flew up, like a beautiful parabola. And the pistols that were in their hands just now had actually fallen into Bailey Liu's hands. Paw paw paw, Bailey Liu pulled the trigger and madly shot at the men in black who had no leader and still didn't understand what had happened. Fong Haohan regained his freedom and immediately rushed towards Leah. Leah was the only woman at the scene who didn't have the ability to protect herself. Fong Haohan was worried that she would be in danger in this fierce fight. Fong Yingying's body rolled on the ground, picked up a pistol that had fallen, and shot the crotch of a man in black. Don't ask why he shot the crotch. When he got up from the ground, the muzzle just happened to be aimed at that undignified position. The bastard who had just forced him to urge the snake to attack, and shouted for him to kill his enemy, actually died so quickly in front of him. The scene in front of him changed too quickly, and it made Fong Haohan feel very unreal. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that Jiang Junling was already dead. That was the general's order that everyone knew, the general's order that was full of schemes, the general's order that was on par with Qin Qian's. Forget it, I'm not going to say that slogan anymore. That young mistress of the Qin family would definitely not like it. That was Fong Yan's archenemy, Jiang Junling, who was also the young master of the general family who hated and killed Fong Yan for several years. Such a person was stabbed through with a knife. Even if he was also at the scene, Snake Lord couldn't believe what he saw. However, he still had to react. He said that he wanted Jiang Junling to suffer the pain of thousands of snakes biting his heart. A man should keep his word. If he said he would treat you to KFC, he would never treat you to McDonald's. Therefore, Snake Lord blew the fighting snake song, urging the densely packed snake formation to crawl toward the General Ling's body, which gave people goosebumps all over their bodies. Hiss, 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 the scene was too horrible to look at. Seeing Snake Lord's reaction, Bailey Liu immediately felt that the power in his body was out of control. Now that the enemy was right in front of them, and there were still many of Jiang Junling's henchmen and the group of men in black with weapons in their hands hadn't been dealt with, Fong Yan, that idiot, actually drove the snake formation to deal with a corpse. But thinking of the misunderstanding just now and his unforgettable hatred for Jiang Junling, he could only forgive his stupid behavior. While thinking of this, Bailey Liu kicked a man in black who was about to activate the genetic bomb and die with everyone into the sea. Boom! The genetic bomb exploded in the sea, rolling up a wave several meters high. No one cared about the life or death of the man in black. Perhaps he was already a dead man the moment he fell into the water. This was a one-sided massacre. When Fong Yan returned to Swallow Dock, he saw that there were guests at his house. His grandfather, Fong Hui, was drinking tea and chatting with the guests. Seeing that Fong Yan had returned, Fong Hui laughed and scolded him, "Kid, you've been away for most of the day. You made Master wait for so long." "Master, why are you here?" Fong Yan asked in surprise. He didn't expect that his master, Tianjizi, would come to Swallow Dock. Tianjizi's long robe fluttered in the wind, and he looked like an immortal. Stroking his long beard, he looked at Fang Yan lovingly and said, "Swallow Dock is a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. I've admired it for a long time, and I've finally come here. I've benefited a lot from the long talk with Elder Fang." Tianjizi's status in Jianghu was far higher than Fang Hui's, but Fang Hui was older. Therefore, Tianjizi's words were very respectful. Moreover, although Fang Hui's legs were disabled, his mind was active and his wisdom was as vast as the sea. Even a Daoist expert like Tianjizi might not be able to win any verbal advantage in front of him. Tianjizi said that he benefited a lot, mainly because Fang Hui's way of thinking had affected his thinking. "You flatter me, Daoist. I'm old and muddle-headed. Please forgive me if I said something wrong." Fang Hui laughed and looked at Fang Yan, saying, "You master and disciple have a chat. I'll go to the backyard to accompany my bird. Elder Fang, please wait." Tianjizi stopped him. Fang Hui was about to leave in his wheelchair when he heard Tianjizi's words. He turned around and asked, "What can I do for you, Elder Fang?" "Elder Fang, do you have a leg problem?" Tianjizi stared at Fang Hui's legs on the wheelchair and asked. "I've been disabled for many years," Fang Hui said quite frankly. He had long accepted this fate. "May I ask, what caused it?" Tianjizi continued to ask. Fang Yan's eyes lit up and he hurriedly answered, "Grandpa was a hero in Jianghu. He was the first to put forward the idea of hard fighting in Tai Chi, and he was also the one who carried forward hard Tai Chi later. He was injured in a martial arts competition and couldn't stand up anymore. Master, can you save my grandpa?" Fang Hui's expression changed slightly, and then he asked with a look of surprise, "Is this true?" Tianjizi smiled without answering and said, "Can I have a look?" "As you wish." Fang Hui said with a laugh. "It's already rotten wood and withered branches. It's useless to keep it and inelegant to discard it." Fang Yan hurriedly went forward and rolled up his grandpa's trouser leg. Tianjizi squatted down and put 2 fingers on the inside of Fang Hui's leg. After a long time, Tianjizi said in a deep voice, "His vital energy has been cut off." The hope on Fang Hui's face turned into disappointment, and then returned to normal in an instant. He said with a smile, "Thank you, Elder Daoist. I've been paralyzed for many years, and I don't have any expectations. When I was paralyzed, I always fantasized that I could stand up. I went everywhere to ask for medicine, hoping for a miracle. But later, I was disappointed too many times, and my heart became cold. Sometimes, people have to accept their fate." Fang Yan didn't give up. He looked at Tianjizi and asked, "Master, can you save him?" "It's not impossible." Tianjizi said with a smile. "Let me have a try." Old Master Fang Hui's eyes widened again. Was this master and disciple playing with this old guy? Just now, he had already said that his vital energy had been severed, which sent chills down everyone's spines. Not only that, he even said that it was fine and that he wouldn't mind. As a martial arts madman who viewed martial arts as his life, how could he not care about such a thing? He had already accepted his fate, so why did he say that it was not impossible? If it weren't for the fact that the fall guy was his grandson, he would have suspected that the old Taoist was here to cheat him of money. Was there any lack of such things in the news? Those fake monks and Taoist priests specifically targeted old people like him. Chapter 8:22. Don't be full when you eat, and don't be full when you speak. Fang Yan knew that Master Tianjizi was holding back. Since he was willing to help his grandpa's leg disease, it proved that he was sure that he could cure his grandpa's paralysis. At least it would improve his legs. Master Tianjizi just said that his grandpa's legs were cut off, but Fang Yan knew that his master was good at spring comes from withered wood. If he could rejuvenate his grandpa's two withered wood legs, wouldn't that be the ultimate meaning of Taoism? Thank you, Master. Fong Yen said gratefully. Thank you, Master. Tian Jizi nodded and walked to the back of Fong Hui's wheelchair with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Fong Hui and Fong Yen were filled with curiosity. Old Master Fong Hui's leg was clearly injured, so why did Tian Jizi run to his back? The human body is like a tree, and the soul of the tree is at the root. As long as the root is not cut off, nourished by water and bathed in the sun, it will be able to rejuvenate and sprout. Tian Jizi understood Fong Yan's doubts and explained aloud. Those who only know how to treat the head and legs are unqualified quacks. Most head diseases can be treated and improved in the soles of the feet. There are many acupoints on the soles of the feet, and each acupoint corresponds to the major organs of the human body. This is also the principle of barefoot health. Tian Jizi held the horsetail whisk in one hand and put the other hand flat on the top of Fong Hui's head. As I said just now, Mr. Fong's legs are cut off, and it is very difficult to treat the disease from the legs. Because it is difficult to bear force there, and it is even more difficult to transfer qi. In this way, you can only get twice the result or return without any results. Tian Jizi's words were quite instructive to Fong Yen. He glanced at Fong Yen and said, "You must remember." Fong Yen said respectfully, "I understand." Tian Jizi nodded and didn't move, but a green light appeared in his palm. The cyan light enveloped the top of Fong Hui's head, as if it wanted to open a hole there and drill into it. A few seconds later, Fong Hui's forehead was covered in sweat. Half a minute later, Fong Hui was sweating profusely. Even his clothes were soaked. Fong Yen was surprised, but he did not disturb him. He was afraid that he would affect his master's treatment because he knew better than anyone else how much his grandfather wanted him to stand up. When Mo Qingdi's tendons were cut, he said that he hated himself for not being able to stand up. When the Fong family was looked down upon and bullied, he said that he hated himself for not being able to stand up. When Fong Yan's father, Fong Yixing, died in battle at the entrance of Swallow Dock Village, Fong Yen carried his father's corpse home. That day, Grandpa sat in the wheelchair and didn't say a word. However, Fong Yen would never forget the look in his eyes at that time. His eyes were filled with grief, despair, great guilt, and deep hatred. It was a pair of blood-red eyes. There were no tears, but it made everyone who saw it want to cry. It was also because it was difficult to forget that pair of eyes that Fong Yen blamed himself during the 3 years he was guarding his father's grave. If he had been a little earlier, if he had been a little faster, would he have been able to save his father? Would he have saved Grandpa from the most painful thing in life, where he had to see his son die before him? About 2 minutes later, Fong Hui's body began to tremble. He clenched his teeth to prevent himself from groaning in pain. His hands on the wheelchair kept trembling. His legs, which had been immobile for many years, also began to move. Although it was very small, it was still obvious that they were trembling. They moved. Fong Yen looked surprised. My legs moved. Old man Fong Hui's eyes were wide open. He felt a boiling hot torrent running through his body. Like red-hot molten steel flowing into a ditch, the blocked blood vessels and acupuncture points in his body were all forcefully opened. Taoism emphasized peace and tranquility, but when it came to treating illnesses, it was overbearing and barbaric. His body was in pain, but his heart was filled with joy. Hearing Fong Yan's voice, he wanted to grin, but because his body was in too much pain, his smile was a little distorted, and it was more like a distorted cry. They moved, Fong Hui said aloud, his voice becoming hoarse. I felt them move, this pair of old companions. We haven't been in contact for many years. When old Master Fong Hui's hair stood on end, some of them looking like they were about to be scorched, Tian Jizi finally retracted his palm. He exhaled, then looked at Fong Yen and said, Elder Fong's body is weak, and it's difficult for him to bear too much aura of the Azure Bowl at one time. If you force yourself to hold on, you will only faint. Let's call it a day. Elder Fong, have a good rest. Don't take a bath, just find a clean towel to wipe your body. Fong Hui knew that what Tianjizi said was the truth. Although he desperately endured for the sake of his dignity and treatment, if he persisted, his physical strength would be exhausted, and he might not be able to escape the consequence of fainting. It was good to have a temporary rest. However, he was still a little unwilling in his heart. If his legs could be cured in one go, he would be willing to accept fainting. Daoist master, my legs. Fong Hui let Fong Yen wipe the sweat off his face with a towel, then looked at Tianjizi anxiously and asked. I felt them move just now. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but for so many years, I couldn't feel their existence. They were like two pieces of wood on top of my body. Just now, I connected with them. I felt a burning sensation. Tianjizi looked at Fong Hui with a face full of smiles and said, Elder Fong, I just helped you clear the meridians in your body. Because it was the first time I did this, the effect was the best. The second and third times will be slightly weaker. However, as long as you persevere, Elder Fong's leg disease will definitely be completely healed. I can't thank you enough. Fong Hui sat in his wheelchair and bowed to Tianjizi. Tianjizi stepped aside and said, Fong Yen and I are master and disciple. Elder Fong's actions have messed up the seniority. Elder Fong, please rest, I'll have a few more words with Fong Yen. Go ahead. Fong Hui said with a smile. Fong Yen, take good care of your master for me. Grandpa, don't worry. Fong Yen said with a smile. Fong Hui said goodbye to Tianjizi, then had his manservant, Fong Fusheng, push him to his room in the backyard to tidy up. Fong Yen asked Tianjizi to sit down, then poured him a cup of hot tea, then suddenly knelt in front of Tianjizi and kowtowed 3 times. Tianjizi didn't stop him, but looked at Fong Yen and said, when we confirmed our master-disciple relationship, you didn't kneel to me, why are you kneeling now? Thank you, master, for giving me a new lease of life. Fong Yen said with a serious face. Give you a new lease of life. Tianjizi shook his head and said, it's just to treat my leg disease. Master, you should be able to see that Grandpa's physical condition is very bad. Grandpa has loved martial arts all his life, but ever since his legs were paralyzed, he felt that life was meaningless. But in order to support the Fong family, he has been working hard to support it. Ever since my father died tragically at the village entrance 3 years ago, his body has suddenly deteriorated, and most of the spirit that supported him has been lost. Especially in the past 6 months, he has been half asleep and half awake every day, and his body has become so weak. I'm away from home, and every night I wake up from nightmares, dreaming that Grandpa is sitting in a wheelchair, waving at me, waving goodbye to me. If Master can cure Grandpa's leg, if he can stand up again, if he can practice martial arts again, I think his spirit will return, and his life will continue. Our Fong family can no longer have anyone leave, not a single one. Fong Yan's voice was deep and sincere. As he spoke, his eyes were red, seeming to be very worried about his grandfather's body. Pity your filial piety. The divine Jizi looked at Fong Yen with a gratified expression and said, as I said earlier, it's not that your grandfather's leg can't be cured. As long as he uses the Azure Ox Chi to help him unblock and repair it, he can still stand up again. It's just that I can't stay in Swallow Dock for a long time, and this is a big problem. Fong Yen crawled up from the ground and looked at the divine Jizi. I know Master has already thought of a way. That's right. There is indeed a way to solve this problem, the divine Jizi said with a smile. Come back with me and learn my Azure Ox Chi transfer technique, and my spring returns to withered wood. When you return, massage your grandfather every day, and your grandfather's leg will naturally be cured. Since ancient times, medicine and Taoism have been inseparable. At that time, you can also use this technique to help your mother's body. Her qi and blood are also weak, probably because of the worries in her heart that can't be resolved. Fang Yan frowned and said, "Of course I'm willing to follow Master to learn, but I'm currently trapped in a cage, and there are many things that I have to deal with. It has to do with the Jiang family's coercion. Master also knows about this. There are millions of disciples in the Gate of Tao. It's very easy for me to find out a few things," the divine Jizi said with a prideful expression. "Think about it. Is it more useful for you to stay in the outside world and fight against the Jiang family, or is it more effective for you to follow me to the Gate of Tao? If the Jiang family knows that you're following me to the Gate of Tao, some of them will definitely be more cautious, and some things will naturally be done more discreetly. Furthermore, once you join my Gate of Tao, the millions of disciples will be your staunch support. At that time, who would dare to bully you?" Chapter 823. Taoism was the sect of all Taoists. Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Although Taoism had declined in recent years and was the weakest of the three, it had a heritage of 1,000 years. However, it had been passed down for thousands of years, so it naturally had a deep foundation. Be it wealth or combat strength, it was not something others could compete with. Even if it was a family of generals that was as wealthy as a nation, if they really offended the Taoists, they might not be able to gain any advantage. Just as his master, Divine Jizi, said, if there were 10 million Taoist disciples backing Fang Yan, the general family would not be able to do anything to him. At the very least, his life would be guaranteed. However, Fang Yan still couldn't agree to it. Or rather, he couldn't casually agree to it. Fang Yan looked warily at Divine Jizi and asked with a smile, "Master, tell me directly. What do you want me to do? Don't think that monks weren't human, and don't think that monks didn't have smart people." His master, Divine Jizi, had rushed all the way to Swallow Dock. If it was just to treat his grandfather's leg, Fang Yan would never believe it. He had repeatedly enticed him to head to the Taoists and even said that he was willing to have 10 million Taoist disciples backing him. Then, what did he want? Or rather, what did the Taoists want? Without figuring this out, Fang Yan didn't have the courage to close his eyes and follow his master to the Taoists. Although he was very willing to believe in his master. "Do you still remember what I told you about the Taiji painting?" Divine Jizi asked in a deep voice. "Yes." Fang Yan's mind stirred as he asked, "What happened?" "Not long ago, one of the 3 dragons of Hua Xia, Black Dragon, headed to the Immeasurable Temple to steal the Taiji painting." Divine Jizi's eyes were filled with anger as he said, "The Immeasurable Temple is where the dignity of the Taoists lies. How can we tolerate such impudence? To forcefully plunder it, isn't this bullying us Taoists?" "And then?" Fang Yan asked anxiously. The most mysterious of the 3 dragons of Hua Xia, Black Dragon, had appeared. Furthermore, he had appeared for the Taiji painting. Black Dragon had been famous for a long time and was already a heavenly Tao realm expert. Why did he need the Taiji painting? What secrets were hidden in the Tai Chi diagram? The Black Dragon injured Qing Xian, the book reader of the Fanghua Pavilion. The Taichung sect master discovered the enemy and fought with him. The Black Dragon saw that it was difficult for him to win, so he escaped under the cover of night. The Tai Chi painting wasn't stolen, was it? Of course. The Taiji diagram is the Tao sect's supreme treasure. How can it be casually taken away by someone? After pondering for a while, Fang Yan looked at Tian Jizi and said, "At that time, the 2 masters were looking for the guardian of the Tai Chi diagram. I wonder if you have found the fated person." Tian Jizi looked at Fang Yan and said, "Whether we are fated or not, we have to see the Tai Chi painting first. Fang Yan, are you willing to give it a try?" "Why me?" Fang Yan asked. Because we are fated, Tianjizi said. I have always been looking for a fated person. However, you and I are fated. Isn't it also fated with the Tai Chi painting? When Tyrant and I first saw you, we had already included you in our list of candidates. However, at that time, you were too vicious and frivolous. It was difficult for you to bear the heavy responsibility. Master, in fact, I am quite frivolous now, Fang Yan said hurriedly. Tianjizi looked at Fang Yan with a burning gaze and asked, until today, you are still unwilling to bear this responsibility. Master, I am too tired. Fang Yan looked at his master Tianjizi sincerely and said, I want to protect this family, and I am already exhausted. How would they be able to protect this country and its people? I am afraid of suffering and tiredness. I just want to rest, let me take a breather. There was a faint smile on Fang Yan's face, as if a gust of wind could blow it away without a trace. I am a lazy person. If possible, I just want to find a school and be a leisurely teacher who stands aloof from worldly affairs. But I have been forced to this step. Every step is filled with danger, and every step is filled with danger. Master, I am afraid. I am afraid that if I die, our Fang family will be finished. My grandpa is old and weak, my mother is sick because of long-term worry, and I haven't even married a wife. If I die, our Fang family will be ruined. I am not a bad person, and I am not a coward. When the country needs me, I am willing to stand up and fight for it. Like the countless heroes and sages of our Swallow Dock, I am willing to fight for the prosperity of the country and the destiny of the people. But I don't want to take the initiative to meet them. I don't want to carry those responsibilities on my shoulders all the time. I don't want to suppress myself to the point that I can't breathe. I don't want to think that I'm the guardian of the Taiji painting every time I wake up from my sleep. Is there anything that I didn't do well or do well? Master, my biggest dream is to take good care of my grandpa's health, to make my mother happy, to marry a wife and have several children, and then to live happily with my family. Oh, by the way, Master, I am going to get married. Yi-Ro, she is a very good girl. Tianjizi pondered for a long time, then looked at Fang Yan and asked, if I give you the Tai Chi diagram, do you want it? Yes, Fang Yan answered without hesitation. Whoever didn't want it was an idiot, but just because I took the Tai Chi diagram, you can't treat me as the guardian of the nation. Someone in the east invaded the border, looking for Fang Yan. Someone killed someone in the west, looking for Fang Yan. A cow disappeared in the south, looking for Fang Yan. Whose daughter-in-law in the north didn't get pregnant, looking for Fang Yan. Fang Yan hoped that he was an independent individual with his own thoughts, not a puppet held hostage by national righteousness. Come with me, Tianjizi said. Master. Fang Yan was shocked. You really gave me the Tai Chi diagram. As you said just now, you are not a bad person, let alone a coward. You already have the basic conditions to obtain the Tai Chi diagram. Taoists pay attention to naturalness, and they will never force others with their own will. Don't worry, even if you get the Tai Chi diagram, you are still Fang Yan. Just like how Mo Qingdi was still Mo Qingdi even after he got the Tai Chi diagram. Master, I'm going to pack up now, let's go immediately, Fang Yan said excitedly. Your grandfather asked me to stay for lunch. Tianjizi said helplessly. Is this kid driving me away? Oh, is that so? Fang Yan was stunned for a moment, then said, then I'll go pack up first. We'll leave whenever you say so. It had just rained on Monkey Mountain, so the entire forest had been washed. The leaves were clear and beautiful, and the rocks were bright. The Daoist temple that was built at the edge of the cliff gave people an even more mysterious feeling, as if it was a divine temple. Fang Yan had been in Wuliang Temple for 3 days. Except for his master, Tian Jizi, who brought him in. Everyone else in the Taoist temple treated him like an invisible person. This was a little different from what he had expected. A talented young man like him was the hope of Taoism's resurgence. His master personally went to Swallow Dock to invite him. When he arrived at Wuliang Temple, the Taoist Taichung school led the legendary 3 mysteries and 7 mysteries to welcome him. Taichung stroked his beard and looked at him. He laughed and pointed at him and said, "This kid has a good foundation and is extremely talented. In the future, the important task of guarding Taoism will be handed over to you." Then, he took his hand and walked into the main hall. Under the gaze of the Taoist gods and countless Taoist elites, he took out the Tai Chi diagram and handed it to him. If he refused, Taichung would give it to him. If he refused again, Taichung would be furious and say that this was what the people of Taoism all over the world wanted. Fang Yen did not see the legendary Taichung schoolmaster. He did not even see the other 2 of the 3 mysteries and 7 mysteries. Don't they realize how important I am? Fang Yen suspected that he had been deceived by his master. They had brought him to Wuliang Temple on purpose to put him under house arrest. But why did they want to imprison him? Could it be that they were also bribed by the Jiang family? Fang Yen thought to himself. Then, he immediately pushed this thought out of his mind. If the Jiang family can even bribe the Taoist sect, then I don't have to resist. I can just extend my head and let them chop it off. The only thing that satisfied Fang Yen was that the living conditions in Wuliang Temple were not bad. There was a balcony in his room. The balcony was suspended in the air, and if he stepped on it, he would see a cliff that was 10,000 feet high. The mountain breeze blew, and the fog lingered. The distant mountains were like an ink painting, decorated with red and green, making people feel relaxed and happy. There was also Wuliang Temple's specialty, ambergris, to refresh his mouth. This kind of tea could not be drunk outside. Fang Yen could not bear to drink too much, so he hid a small pot of tea that the Taoist priest had given him and prepared to bring it back to his grandfather. His grandfather liked to drink this tea, and it was good for his body. Knock, 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 there was a light knock on the door. Fang Yen walked over and opened the door. His master, Tian Jizi, was standing at the door with a smile. "Master, you finally appeared." Fang Yen pulled his master's sleeve and said, "Where is the Tai Chi diagram? Didn't you say that you would give it to me?" Tian Jizi looked at Fang Yen with a smile and said, "After the rain, the weather is late and autumn is coming. The mountains are beautiful, the scenery is good, and the air is good. Why are you always cooped up in the room? Come, I will take you out for a walk." "Master." Fang Yen was not in the mood to look at the scenery. Chaoyan technology was being attacked by the Jiang family, and the willow tree in Lan Mountain Valley was still resisting the endless methods of the Jiang family. Although the Qin family had gone down the mountain to participate in the battle, their support was limited. The Jiang family was attacking with all their might, and the strength of the 2 was different. Most of the attacks had to be resolved by Fang Yen and the others themselves. Fang Yen only wanted to obtain the Tai Chi diagram as soon as possible, unravel the secrets within, discover the ultimate technique inside, and then quickly return to Flower City to kill everyone. When your mind is in a mess, all you see is negative karma. Tian Jizi said unfathomably, "Put down your burden and run to nature." "Master, if you don't give me the Tai Chi diagram, I will run to Swallow Dock." Chapter 8:24. You have no understanding. Tian Jizi looked at Fang Yen with disappointment. He was very disappointed with his disciple. "I have said it so bluntly, but you don't understand anything. Master, with all due respect, you are not straightforward at all. What do you want to say? Are you going to give me the Tai Chi diagram or not? Didn't I tell you to go out to see the scenery and breathe the fresh air? I asked about the Tai Chi diagram, but you asked me to see the scenery. Master, don't play with me, okay? I'm stupid. It's not fun. Tianjizi felt that his breathing became heavy. He wanted to use his 12 palms of the celestial master to slap Fang Yan into meat paste. Inexplicably, how did he get such a disciple? If possible, Tianjizi really wanted to return it. If you don't go out to see the scenery, how can you find the scenery you want to see? Tianjizi forcibly suppressed the hostility in his heart with the lousy mind-clearing mantra and said while looking into Fang Yan's eyes. Worried that he still didn't understand, he blinked his eyes cutely. Master, tell me the truth. Are you going to give me the Tai Chi diagram or not? Why did you blink? Tianjizi took Fang Yan for a walk in the yard, muttering, the beauty of heaven and earth is in the mountains, in the water, in the air, in the breeze, in the moon, in the river. In the spring sowing and autumn harvesting, in the frost, in the snow, in the flowers and plants in the yard, and in the big vat in the corner. It's not that there is no beauty in the world, but there is a lack of eyes to discover it. Fang Yan finally had a pair of eyes that could discover beauty. He strode toward the big vat in the corner of the yard. He stood next to the big vat, but there was no movement in the vat. Master. Fang Yan turned around and called out. His eyes searched around, but he found that he had lost his master. Fang Yan was stunned for a while, and his face became dignified. He picked up a small pebble from the ground and threw it into the big vat. The pebbles splashed with tiny splashes of water, and ripples formed on the surface of the water tank. When the ripples disappeared, the mirror surface of the water tank became calm again. Fang Yan craned his neck to look into the vat. The water was pitch black and seemed bottomless. This was just an ordinary water tank. Many people would set up such a large tank in their yard to raise fish or grow some aquatic plants. However, Fang Yan had an illusion that when he stood in front of the water tank, his heart was pounding fiercely, as if there was a dangerous monster hiding inside, or something important was about to happen. Rain began to fall from the sky again, falling into the water tank. Tiny but beautiful ripples appeared on the surface of the water. The bottom of the water tank had green plants growing wildly, and the bottom of the water tank was covered with dense moss. A snail was carrying a backpack and trying to climb a mountain to a water tank. After climbing a few centimeters with great difficulty, it slipped and fell. It shook its head and tried again. However, all of this was meaningless to Fang Yan. He stretched out his hand and opened it in the air. The tiny raindrops made his palm wet. It's raining. Fang Yan sighed softly. When he turned around and was about to leave, the expression on his face suddenly became strange. His heart pounded again, and an emotion called joy filled his whole body. He turned around abruptly and saw a shocking scene. On the mirror surface of the water tank, two big fish, one red and one black, were blowing bubbles with their huge heads. Puff, puff, puff. One bubble after another came out of their mouths and floated on the surface of the water tank. Soon, they exploded again. You guys are so cute. Fang Yan said to them with a smile. Fang Yan looked at them affectionately, as if he was looking at Yiro. The two big fish, one red and one black, blinked their small eyes and looked at Fang Yan. Then, they blew a long string of bubbles at him. Puff, puff, puff. Fang Yan laughed loudly. Crack. The begonia cup made by Kai Mingfu, a porcelain master from the Qing dynasty, was smashed into pieces on the wall. General Xing's face was gloomy, his eyes cold, and there was an irrepressible ruthlessness in his voice. The whole army was wiped out. General Xing's voice was like a roar. How could the whole army be wiped out? Second young master hid very well, but he was still stepped on by Fang Yan's two martial nephews, Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan. The Snake Lord controlled the snake formation to trap Second Young Master. In a moment of desperation, Second Young Master ignited the genetic bomb, so everyone died. Everyone is dead. General Xing panted heavily. He took a cigar from the box in front of him. After carefully trimming it, he lit it and took a deep puff. In the process of doing this, his state of mind finally calmed down. His eyes were like ghosts in the smoke. He looked at the man in black in front of him and said, "What about you? Why are you still alive?" "Because the heavens want me to live," the black-clothed man said in a heavy voice. "Fang Yen is not dead, so I have to live well." "You don't help." "I've tried, but I failed." The black-clothed man calmly faced General Xing's scrutiny and doubt. He said, "Perhaps I can't turn defeat into victory, but if I want to leave, they can't keep me." Even though he was just a dog of the general family, the black-clothed man had an arrogance that would not allow others to look down on or insult him. General Xing also knew that he was very confident when he said these words. General Xing knew that his probing was too obvious. He took a cigar from the box and threw it over. The black-clothed man caught the cigar and then returned it. He said, "I don't smoke. You're living a boring life." General Xing laughed and teased. "I'm not suspecting you of anything. It's just that this matter is too strange, and this news really does make one's heart feel bad. No matter what, he is my younger brother. Tell me, how should I go back and talk to the old man about this? He always had high hopes for him, but now this hope has been cut off by someone. He must not be in a good mood, right?" The black-clothed man did not answer. He knew that General Xing had no intention of letting him answer this question. General Xing looked at the black-clothed man in front of him and said, "You should know that you and I are grasshoppers on the same boat. In this world, besides the general family, no one can protect you." "I understand," the black-clothed man said. "You are a smart person." General Xing nodded his head with incomparable appreciation. He said, "I'm very happy that you were able to send this news to me. Then, from today onwards, we are friends, right?" The black-clothed man was silent for a while. He said, "I don't have the qualifications to be friends with you." "Ha ha ha." General Xing laughed loudly. He pointed at the black-clothed man and said, "How could that be? You're a bastard, and so am I. We should be friends from birth, right?" A smile appeared on the black-clothed man's face. He was also amused by General Xing's self-deprecating words. General Xing stood up and said, "The white-haired person sending off the black-haired person, this is truly a tragedy. I really don't want the old man's body to be harmed because of this matter, but I still have to tell him. He has to take care of the important matters of the family." The black-clothed man bowed as General Xing left. His body also disappeared into the darkness. Dead? The old man, who was tending to the precious camellia in the courtyard, stopped moving. His body stiffened as if he had been magically frozen. First with surprise and disbelief, then undisguised sorrow. "Is the news confirmed?" "It's confirmed," General Xing said in a low voice. "Although my brother has left the general family, he has been secretly contacting me. It's not easy for him outside, and I have done my best to support him with money and various other resources. After receiving the news, I tried to contact him again, but I still haven't received a response. His assistant has also disappeared. It seems that he's also dead. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse." The old man used a great deal of effort to straighten his back. He took off the cotton gloves on his hands and rubbed his calloused hands together. He said, "No matter what, you have to bring him back to me." "I will," General Xing said with a serious expression. "I've already sent people out to search." No matter what, you have to bring my brother back. The old man sat down on a rattan chair under the eaves. Because he used too much force, the chair creaked. General Xing handed over a cup of hot tea, but the old man did not reach out to take it. I was the one who chased him out, so I have to bring him back. The old man muttered to himself. If he's really gone, find a way to bury him in the Jiang family's ancestral grave. General Xing nodded again and said as if he was making a promise, Grandpa, don't worry. I'll arrange it. I regret it, the old man said softly. What? General Xing was stunned, not understanding why his grandfather would say such a thing. He had roamed his entire life and experienced countless battles, but he had never said the word regret. Some time ago, Sir brought Fang Yan to our home as a guest and had the intention of making peace, but I refused, Jiang Shifu old man said with a sorrowful expression. If I wasn't so extreme and stubborn at that time, I would have called back the military order to apologize and compensate him as much as he should have. This matter wouldn't have developed to this stage, and the military order wouldn't have ended up like this. General Xing was silent. He thought to himself, with his understanding of Fang Yan, if it was just Jiang Junling apologizing to Fang Yan would probably not accept it, right? But, since we've already taken this step. Jiang Shifu old man's hand gripped the handle of the rattan chair so hard that the old twigs creaked. Then let's do our best. The Jiang family in Fang Yan will not rest until one of us is dead. Chapter 825. There was no bright moon, and not a single star. The entire sky was pitch black, just like what they were feeling at this moment. No one would have thought that a fight with an insignificant young man would develop into such a situation. It wasn't as if the Jiang family hadn't stepped on anyone before. There were many youths who were praised as brimming with talent, who still couldn't stand out. Their lives were mediocre, and they spent their lives in sullenness and poverty. Because of their downfall, it naturally affected their descendants. Their entire family would have to pay the price for their foolishness and ignorance of the times. At that time, they should have felt regret, right? But why had things developed in a direction they had never imagined after encountering Fang Yan? General Xing had never thought that the Jiang family would lose, much less that someone from the Jiang family would die. It should be the enemy of the Jiang family that had died. Grandfather Jiang Shifu's voice was very calm, but his words were filled with bone-deep hatred. General Xing knew that his grandfather had finally made his final decision. He would support him and Fang Yan unreservedly, until one side died in battle. Of course, General Xing knew that the one who would die in battle would definitely be Fang Yan, because even now, General Xing still didn't believe that Fang Yan would be able to stop the Jiang family's aircraft carrier, which was moving at full speed. Of course, he would be happy to see such an outcome. I will do my best. General Xing looked at his grandfather and said, I also have the confidence to avenge my younger brother. It's just that the Qin family has always been on the edge of the battlefield, which has brought us great trouble. For now, we still can't understand the Qin family's intentions. If we use too much force, I'm afraid the Qin family will get even more involved, and we will have to first face the pressure the Qin family will bring us. At that time, the Qin family will become our main opponent. If we use too little force, and the Qin family doesn't feel the danger, then they will continue to fish in troubled waters, and take a vicious bite when we are unprepared. That is also extremely dangerous. Tomorrow, I'll go to the Qin family to find an old friend for tea, Grandfather Jiang Shifu said. Jiang Shifu said, it's time for you and that girl to give the Qin family an explanation. I'm sorry, General Xing said with a guilty expression. I've caused trouble for grandfather. Jiang Shifu waved his hand and said, military order, I once had high hopes for him, but he disappointed me later on. I don't want that to happen to you. General Xing's eyes flashed with the light of swords as he said, I will make Fang Yan pay the heaviest price for what he has done. Go. Jiang Shifu waved his hand and said, do your job well and take care of your health. General Xing stood up, bowed deeply to his grandfather, then turned around and walked out the door. After sending off the general, the tigress walked to the old man and said, Master. Who do you think killed the military order? The old man asked. I don't know, the tigress said without hesitation. The old man smiled bitterly and said, you are quite smart to not want to get involved in these troublesome matters. Go and check it out. See if this grandson of mine is still my grandson. Yes. The tigress replied and strode away. The old man sat in the courtyard and sighed heavily. He thought of Fang Hui, the old man who also lost his son. When he found out that his son died at the entrance of the village, his mood should be the same as mine, as cold to the bone, right? Winter is coming. Jiang Shifu old man pulled the front of his clothes and sighed softly, Yanjing. Maple Leaf Club. Luo Mingan stood at the entrance of the club, personally greeting every guest. Tonight, Maple Leaf Club will host a charity dinner. The proceeds will be donated to a group of nuns to help them rebuild their temple. This event was personally arranged by the real boss of Maple Leaf Club, Qin Tian. One of the 3 Maple Leaves of Maple Leaf Club, Luo Mingan, was in charge of this event. Luo Mingan greeted the VIPs with a smile as he looked at the elevator. She knew that woman would arrive very soon. But what made Luo Mingan confused was, since when did the Yin family and the Qin family have a relationship? She never heard that the woman from the Yin family had any sort of relationship with the woman from the Yin family. However, such a thing had happened, and she was the one who had to handle it personally. Just as she was thinking about this, the elevator door opened again. Phoenix, dressed in a cyan frock, came out holding an old nun, followed by several other nuns in cyan shirts and hats. Seeing in Xiao Xiao's dress, Luo Mingan was stunned for a moment. Because she didn't know how to greet the young lady of the Yin family. She couldn't just call her Abbess or Master, could she? Of course, she only hesitated for a second. Luo Mingan quickly walked towards Phoenix and said with a smile, Missin, you're finally here. The 120 invited guests are almost all here. Would you like to go on stage and say a few words? Phoenix came over with the help of the old nun. She looked at Luo Mingan gratefully and said, Mingan, you've worked hard. If it weren't for you, it might have taken a long time for my masters and I to return home. I won't go on stage to say anything. I'll recite the Diamond Sutra with my masters and sisters backstage for those generous and kind people. Thank you, Missin. I'll convey your great love to everyone. I think everyone will be enthusiastic and help the masters rebuild the temple and rebuild the Sutra Pavilion. When Luo Mingan said this, her eyes were also looking at Phoenix. She had seen Phoenix once before. At that time, the woman was still proud and willful, with a spirited face and memorable red hair. Now Phoenix's hair was long and wrapped in a cyan hat. Her cheeks were thin, her eyes were deep, her temperament was calm, and she spoke gently. She seemed to be in a good state of mind. However, if the woman of the Yin family wanted to rebuild a temple, would she still need to use this kind of fundraising method? It was said that she and the nuns she brought back had lived outside for a long time and had never stepped into the Yin family. Even if the Yin family went to look for her, she would avoid them. She was hostile to her own family. Phoenix bowed to Luo Mingan and said, Thank you again, Mingan. Missin, please go backstage and rest. Luo Mingan made an inviting gesture. Seeing Phoenix's slim back as she left with the nuns, Luo Mingan sighed softly in his heart. Why bother? Qin Tian was very busy these days. In fact, she could have been less busy because she was used to handing over a lot of things to her assistants and secretaries. However, if she didn't let herself be busy, she would be in a bad mood. Therefore, she took back the things that had been handed over in the past. For some major cooperation projects, she would personally negotiate. For some dispensable meetings, she would also attend for a while. For some collaborators that she was annoyed with before, she was also willing to take a few minutes out of her busy schedule to meet them. Oh, she even went to the CEO's office to look at the afternoon tea menu. She changed the cheesecake into matcha cake, saying that the former was too fat and not suitable for weight loss. At the end of a full day, when Chinitian was ready to get off work and leave, the phone on the table rang. The assistant next to her picked up the phone and reported to Chinitian, saying, "Miss, there is a Miss Yi at the front desk asking to see you." "What?" Chinitian closed the magazine in her hand. After a moment of thought, she said, "If her surname is Yi, then she must have said that she wanted to see me, not that she wanted to see me. Is that right?" The assistant didn't think it was a surprise, because he didn't think there was anything in this world that could be hidden from this proud and beautiful woman. He nodded and said, "Yes, the secretary at the front desk did say so. Miss Yi asked to see you. Invite her up," Chinitian said. The assistant conveyed the order and hung up the phone. Chinitian thought for a while, got up from the sofa, and said, "I'd better go out to meet her. After all, she is a guest from afar." The personal secretary brought up a pair of high heels and a coat, and the assistants packed up and followed Chinitian out of the door. Ding! When the elevator arrived, Yi Ro appeared in the exclusive elevator for Chinitian. Yi Ro looked at Chinitian, who was standing at the door to greet her, and her expression didn't change at all. It seemed that this kind of thing was also within her expectation. She looked at Chinitian and explained, "I thought you should be here, so I came to meet you. I hope I didn't disturb you." Chinitian nodded, like a proud little swan, and turned around and said, "Please come with me." After entering the office, she said to the secretaries and assistants around her, "You can all leave now. Don't come in without my order. Miss, do you want some tea? Or coffee?" the secretary asked with embarrassment. "No need," Chinitian said. "Not now." Clang! The luxurious door of the office was slammed shut. Chinitian looked at Yi Ro and said, "Are you here to make fun of me?" After a pause, she shook her head and said, "No. You are not that kind of shallow woman." She seriously looked at Yi Ro standing in front of her and said, "So, are you here to comfort me?" She shook her head again and said, "No, this is not something you can do." "Then, Miss Yi, why did you come to see me?" Chapter 826. In ancient times, there was a saying that a king couldn't meet another king. Now, there was a saying that the first branch couldn't meet the mistress. When two or more women were together, the fierceness of the fight could be compared to a small-scale war. One was a powerhouse who stood at the peak of martial arts, and the other was a queen who was as rich as a country. Any man who was able to gain the favor of one of them would be a great blessing to his ancestors. However, Fong Yan just had deep feelings for these two women. "You couldn't have your cake and eat it too." Chinitian and Yi Ro were much more precious than fish and bear paws. Therefore, when Fong Yan wanted to marry Yi Ro, he would naturally hurt the other woman, Chinitian. Chinitian was such a proud and independent woman. Strictly speaking, she was the loser in this battle of love. Today, Yi Ro took the initiative to meet her, which naturally aroused her uncontrollable jealousy in her heart. Whether it was a woman or a goddess, jealousy was inborn and hard to get rid of. Even an excellent woman like Chinitian couldn't help but think, why did he choose Yi Ro instead of Chinitian? Is she really more suitable than me? Chinitian refused to accept it. Therefore, the moment she saw Yi Ro, she had restrained and reduced her hostility. Yi Ro knew where her hostility came from, so she didn't get angry and treated it indifferently. Yi Ro's attitude angered Qin Tian even more. She found that the more she showed that she cared about Yi Ro, the more it proved that she had lost completely. Of course, this was only a battle between a few sentences. Soon, both of them returned to their normal state of interaction. Qin Tian didn't want to continue to entangle with the enemy on the battlefield where she had been defeated, so she led the topic to Yi Ro herself. She was a little curious. Yi Ro was going to marry Fang Yan. Why did she come to visit me at this time? To show off. She rejected this idea without hesitation. If Yi Ro was a woman with no self-restraint, Fang Yan wouldn't have chosen her as his life partner. Qin Tian believed in his own judgment. How could the man she fancied be bad? Qin Tian's office was excessively spacious and luxurious. There was an office area, a lounge area, a sports area, and even a music area. Usually, in addition to Qin Tian working and resting here, there were several secretaries and assistants guarding around to receive all kinds of orders from Qin Tian at any time. To facilitate the negotiation with Yi Ro, Qin Tian drove all the staff out. Even though there were only 2 skinny women in this 400 to 500 square meters room, it did not feel empty and desolate. This was because the aura that these 2 women exuded was enough to fill up this huge room. Yi Ro walked to the French window and looked down at the city. She said softly, "Fang Yan is having a hard time. Only you can help him." Straight to the point. Regardless of whether she liked this woman or not, Qin Tian had to admit that she liked this woman's straightforwardness and magnanimity. If there was something to say, just say it. Squeaking and nagging would only make people annoyed. Qin Tian walked to the sofa and sat down. She picked up the banana milkshake that she had just taken a sip of. She sucked the pure white soft tube with her delicate red lips and said with a smile, "Did you come for this matter? The general family's offensive is fierce. Watching can't withstand it. If you were someone else, Fang Yan would ask you for help. But, you are Qin Tian, so, no matter how difficult it is, he won't ask you for help," Yi Ro said softly. So, I should take the initiative to help him. Qin Tian looked at Yi Ro thoughtfully and said with a smile, "How do you know that I didn't help him?" "I know that you have been helping him." Yi Ro looked at Qin Tian calmly, making it clear that she was speaking from the bottom of her heart. "I know that you have done many things behind his back. But this is far from enough, so, what you mean is, I should drag the entire Qin family into a battle with the general family. What if the general family will suffer a crushing defeat in this battle?" Qin Tian's eyes were like twinkling stars, instantly lighting up the entire room. He asked, "What guarantee do you have?" "The Heavenly Tao Realm's heart of Heavenly Tao," Yi Ro said with certainty. After entering the Heavenly Tao Realm, one has to follow the heavens and follow one's heart. If one goes against this heart, at best, one's cultivation will no longer improve. At worst, one's realm will collapse and one will become a cripple. Qin Tian sighed softly and said, "You should know my current situation in the Qin family. It's not up to me to make decisions in the Qin family. The influence I can bring is also extremely limited. If I could make decisions, would I need to wait for you to come to me today? The general family would have long been destroyed. I'm only telling you the outcome. As for how the Qin family will react, that will require you to convince them." Yi Ro turned around and looked into Qin Tian's beautiful eyes. The setting sun outside the window elongated her figure infinitely. Her shadow was cast on the sofa next to Qin Tian. Half of their bodies overlapped, and they looked like a pair of sisters who were very close to each other. "I know you're very smart. Everyone knows you're very smart. I believe that there's nothing in this world that can stop you. As long as you're willing, you can do it. It's the same for me." Qin Tian bit his lips and snorted coldly. "Are you trying to provoke me? Bring it on." Fang Yan didn't know that the two girls were at daggers drawn in Yen capital. All his thoughts and energy were focused on the large fish tank. Ever since his master, Tian Jizi, directed his attention to that big fish tank, he had never left that fish tank. He didn't eat, drink, or move. He just stood next to the fish tank, watching every change in the fish tank. He watched the black and red fish bubble, watched them stir the water in the fish tank into whirlpools, watched the calm water, and watched the ripples when the raindrops fell into the tank. Fang Yan had been standing in front of the fish tank for 3 days. No one told Fang Yan if the fish tank was the legendary treasure, Tai Chi diagram, but Fang Yan knew very well that it was the Tai Chi diagram he was looking for. What was Tai Chi? Zhuangzi said, above Tai Chi, it's not high, below the 6 extremes, it's not deep, born in ancient times, it's not old. Tai Chi was big. Ji was the end, the extreme point. The fish tank wasn't big enough, and the water in the tank wasn't deep enough. It wasn't that one couldn't see the end of it. However, everything complemented each other and formed a harmonious whole. The fish benefited from the water and the fish. The fish were happy from the water and the tank. The water had a tank, and the fish in the tank lived. The fish were alive, and the water was flowing. With the living fish and water, the tank became lively. Some people only looked at the fish and the water, but no one ever looked at the tank. What was a tank? It was the foundation and also the core. It was the root and also the soul. It could be the round frame on the Tai Chi diagram, or it could be the inside of the black and white fish. It could be infinitely big or infinitely small. It changed with the number of fish and the depth of the water, but it also limited the number of fish and the depth of the water. It was the sea of energy of Fang Yan's Tai Chi heart, the crazily spinning core. No matter how the fish swam, no matter how the water was stirred, the core would not disperse, and the fish would not die. 1 is 2, 2 is infinite. 1 is not a number, it is nothing. It is nothing. It is infinite to begin with, so why regenerate it? Countless kinds of information were gathering in Fang Yan's mind, and countless thoughts were colliding. Some of those thoughts were in pairs, some were in groups of 3 to 5, and some were promoting and nourishing each other. Most of the time, they were in conflict with each other, killing each other to the death. The so-called heavenly Tao realm was not a competition with others, but a competition with oneself. If one couldn't even convince oneself, how could one conquer the heavenly Tao? When one's thoughts were clear, it was the day one could step through the door to the heavenly Tao. Fang Yan saw a glimmer of hope, as though he could touch it just by reaching out his hand. But what he needed to do now was to first convince himself. At the courtyard's arched door, on the moss-covered stone steps, several Taoists stood silently. The leader of the group was a Taoist priest who looked extremely old. His old age was a kind of feeling. It was the kind of feeling that made people feel that he was old, that he should have experienced many hardships, and that he should be respected by everyone. However, one could not find any signs of old age on him. This was the return to simplicity that came when one's cultivation level reached its pinnacle. It could also be said to be the Taoist's spring returns to a withered tree. Behind him were a few Taoists of different heights dressed in azure-colored robes. They served behind the elder, deliberately maintaining a distance of a step from him. "How long have you been standing there?" the elder asked. "Sect Master, he has been standing there for 3 days, Divine Jizi said softly. "That means that he entered a meditative state on the 2nd day he came to Immeasurable Temple," Sect Master Taichung said in astonishment. "I heard that he and the previous Taiji diagram guardian, Mo Qingdi, were fellow disciples? How long has Mo Qingdi been staying here?" 97 days, a fat Taoist with a horsetail whisk in hand said. "Mo Qingdi was brought here by me." "All right, Sect Master Taichung wore a faint smile as he asked, "Everyone, why don't you guess how many days this child can stay in Immeasurable Temple?" Mo Qingdi is extremely talented. He has stayed for 97 days, so Fang Yan will naturally stay for more than half a year. That's hard to say. Look at him, he seems to have gained some enlightenment. Perhaps he can return in 100 days, I guess. Divine Jizi gritted his teeth and thought that since Fang Yan was his disciple, he definitely had to support him. He said, 2 months is enough. Chapter 8:27. The rain stopped and fell, and the sky brightened and darkened. The clothes on his body were soaked by the rain and dried by the warm wind. The snail on the ground climbed up to his shoes with great difficulty, but it accidentally rolled down and disappeared. Fang Yan had been standing in front of the vat for 7 days. He could not feel the wind and rain, nor could he feel the cold or hunger. His body had entered a very subtle state, like a sleeping bag filled with oxygen, or a room with burning charcoal in a world of ice and snow. It was warm, comfortable, and relaxed. At first, his thoughts were very chaotic. Countless thoughts emerged, and countless information gathered. It was clear who was the enemy and who was the friend. Small-scale fights and large-scale killings emerged one after another. When his head could no longer support itself, when he felt that his body was about to explode, everything quieted down. His mind became a sea of clouds. The white clouds drifted and changed infinitely. Then the scenery suddenly changed, and the sea of clouds turned into a boundless ocean. The ocean was divided into 2 poles, one as black as ink, and the other as white as snow. The black pole and the white pole collided with each other. The black pole wanted to swallow the white pole, and the white pole wanted to assimilate the black pole. The waves were turbulent, and the waves splashed. The 2 big fish were like helpless puppets, pushed to the white pole one moment, and then rolled to the black pole the next. Suddenly, the black pole and the white pole began to spin, and the boundless ocean became a crazily spinning vortex. The vortex spun faster and faster, and finally became a pitch-black black hole that could swallow everything. The wind howled, the rain poured, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The whole world seemed like it was about to collapse. After an unknown period of time, when everything stopped, the world returned to its tranquility. The black and white poles were torn apart, and then they slowly rotated clearly. A big fish was at the black pole, and a big fish was at the white pole. They struggled desperately, trying to break out of the cage, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not meet again. This was the power of nature, the law of the heavenly Tao. When the first ray of morning light cut through the darkness, when the beautiful bird sang its first song, when the flowers bloomed, when the dew dripped on the leaves, Fang Yan finally moved. He crossed his legs and put on an authentic Fang plum blossom stance. He bent his body slightly, opened his arms, and hugged the 2 circles. Then, a set of fluent Fang Tai Chi flowed out continuously. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, sometimes it was as light as the clouds, sometimes it was as powerful as a thunderbolt. Sometimes she moved up and down, sometimes she was as still as a virgin. White steam rose from the top of its head, and the water in the tank was boiling. The faster Fang Yan hit, the more violently the water in the vat rolled. From time to time, Pisces would jump out of the water and spit bubbles in the air. Fang Yan sensed the changes in his dantian. The heart of Taiji, which was silent like death at times and burning like fire at other times, once again reacted. It was still hot, even hotter than it had been before. It was as if his abdomen had become a furnace, and that furnace was about to burn a big hole in his stomach. But Fang Yan clearly knew that this was a release. As long as the silent furnace was ignited, the charcoal and the fire energy left in the dantian were completely burned away. the volcano would truly be extinguished. Right now, it was in the process of burning. He was willing to bear this pain because it was benign and had hope. When Fang Yen slowed down his rhythm, the boiling water seemed to freeze, and the active Pisces sank to the bottom. The plum blossom steps were like plum blossoms. As Fang Yan's body moved, countless plum blossoms bloomed. When Fang Yan finished practicing the Fang 19 paths of Taiji and stopped his breathing, the water tank was filled with smoke, like a celestial palace. Water overflowed from the vat, and it flowed endlessly. The water overflow state. Fang Yan's eyes were closed, but there was an intoxicated smile on his face. Fang Yan's clothes were not stained with dust. Fang Yan's face was glowing. He was dressed in a green robe, and looked handsome, like a banished immortal. At this moment, the worry that the Jiang family was pressing on him disappeared in a flash, and the ruthlessness from his father's tragic death completely disappeared. The sky was bright, and the courtyard was filled with birds and flowers. The snail that disappeared crawled out from the damp corner, and once again headed towards Fang Yan's shoes. Fang Yan opened his eyes. His pupils were clear and pure, and his cheeks were as tender as a baby's, as if he had just been reborn. Congratulations. An untimely voice suddenly rang out. Fang Yan turned around and looked at his Shifu, Tian Jizi, who was standing at the arched door of the courtyard. He bowed 90 degrees to him and sincerely thanked him. Thank you, Shifu, for giving me a new lease of life. The water overflows endlessly, and the vital energy never ceases. Tian Jizi looked at the water tank that was still overflowing and sighed. You have done something that no one from the Taiji branch has been able to do for hundreds of years. This is a great merit. Fang Yan smiled and said, I didn't think too much before doing this. I only thought that if I could enter the water overflow state, then I would be able to protect myself and my family better. Small things are big things. Tian Jizi stepped into the door and said, if I can protect myself and my family, then I can protect everyone in the world. Fang Yan smiled and didn't argue with his Shifu about this. He had already said that he wouldn't accept such a heavy responsibility. However, within the scope of his power, he would act against those who were evil, and he would stop those who were attacking. He didn't want to become a famous hero, but he didn't mind being a good person with a sense of justice. Perhaps his name wouldn't be engraved on the stone wall of Swallow Dock, but he would definitely be remembered by his descendants. There are so many things I didn't expect. Tian Jizi looked at Fang Yan. There was surprise in his eyes, but even more shock. When I first saw you, I didn't expect you to be able to stand here. When you stood here, I didn't expect you to enter the divinity state so quickly. After you entered the divinity state, I didn't expect you to break through so quickly. 7 days. You only used 7 days to face death and come back to life. Your body was cleansed, your thoughts became one, and you obtained the supreme Tao. Fang Yan, you are the first person in history to do so. Seeing Fang Yan's puzzled expression, Tian Jizi smiled and explained, 321 years ago, crazy Taoist priest Jing Axian used 111 days to break the ice. 239 years ago, Swift Sword Scholar used 136 days to solve the puzzle. 167 years ago, Lady Honghua of the Western region used 298 days to melt the ice. 31 years ago, Dragon God Mod used 97 days to comprehend the Tao. A few days ago, everyone was joking and guessing how long you would stay here. Some guessed half a year, some guessed 100 days. Because we are master and disciple, I always have more confidence in you. However, my answer is 2 months. Tian Jizi's expression was somewhat self-deprecating. He said, I didn't expect you to not wake up after entering meditation. I visited every day and waited outside the arched door. It wasn't that I didn't have greater expectations, but I was worried that my expectations would be too high and I would be disappointed. What I didn't expect was that you still succeeded. Furthermore, you only used 7 days. Fang Yan once again bowed to his master, Tian Jizi, and said gratefully, "Thank you for your concern and protection, master. Without you, I wouldn't be where I am today." Tian Jizi raised his horsetail whisk and said, "Come with me. The sect master wants to see you." "Yes, master," Fang Yan answered. The first time Fang Yan saw the sect master of Taichung, he felt a sense of familiarity. After breaking through, he could feel the depth of the sect master of Taichung's cultivation, as well as the neutral and peaceful aura he naturally exuded. This was a kind and benevolent old man with a pair of eyes that could see through everything. Standing in front of him, Fang Yan felt like he was naked and transparent, with no secrets to hide. The old man's eyes were deep and pure. His pupils were black, and the whites of his eyes were as white as paper. There was no yellowish hue, nor were there any traces of blood. His eyes didn't seem like the eyes of an old man. With a gentle smile on his face, the old man looked up and down at Fang Yan, then smiled and said, "Heroes come from the young, this saying is indeed true." Fang Yan knelt down in front of the old man and spoke with a clear voice, "Thank you, sect master. Get up. Get up." The old man waved his hand and smiled. "At my age, what I fear the most is people bowing and kowtowing to me. When others kneel, it makes me feel like I'm already very old and won't be able to live much longer. Just look, who wants to have this kind of worry? The sect master has seen through life and death, why would he care about these superficial things?" The old man shook his head, looked at Fang Yan with a firm gaze, and said, "In this world, are there really people who have seen through life and death?" This question really stumped Fang Yan. Whether it's the peasants, the nobles, or the emperors, or people who practice martial arts like them, who isn't afraid of death? There's no need to think about it, there isn't a single one. Those who say they aren't afraid of death are all liars. They either lie to others, or lie to themselves, they are dishonest. Fang Yan nodded and said, "The sect master is right. I am afraid of death. And because I am afraid of death, I work so hard to improve myself, so that I won't be bullied by bad people, and not afraid of being killed by bad people. Being afraid of death is also wrong." The sect master corrected Fang Yan's thoughts. Only with loyalty can there be betrayal, only with insignificance can there be greatness. Only with spring and flowers blooming can there be ice and snow, only with death can there be life. Being afraid of death and seeking life, this is not a mistake. But, if you are only afraid of death, then it's easy to become a coward and lose your backbone. This path is absolutely not to be taken. Fang Yan bowed in acknowledgement and said, "I have learned something." The sect master looked at Fang Yan, and said, "You've already reached the water overflow state, and become a rare expert in this world. What do you want to do next?" Fang Yan thought about it, then looked at the sect master with an extremely sincere gaze, and said with a powerful voice, "Go home and get a wife." Chapter 828. Taiji's water overflow realm was equivalent to the inner world's heavenly Tao realm. Those who could ascend to the heavenly Tao were the cream of the crop in this world. Martial artists were like the vast stars, but those who could ascend to the heavenly Tao realm were like the moon. From the stars surrounding the moon, it was obvious how rare the heavenly Tao realm was. There were very few people in the past few centuries who could ascend to the heavenly Tao at Fang Yan's age. It was inevitable for young people to be arrogant and indulgent. After gaining insights into the great Tao and learning divine powers, they naturally had to fight and roam the world. Years ago, after Amo Qingdi succeeded in ascending to the heavenly Tao realm, he had circled the world before returning. Sect Master Taichung believed that Fang Yan would do the same. After obtaining the highest law of Taiji, he would naturally go out to show his prowess and receive victory and glory. He never expected Fong Yan's answer to be, return home to marry a wife. Was this something a young man should say? Was this something an expert who had just gained insight into the water overflow realm should say? Did he still have any desire to improve? Did he even talk about the 8 honors and 8 shames? Sect Master Taichung was taken aback for a moment as he asked with uncertainty, did you just say, return home to marry a wife? Yes. Return home to marry a wife. Fong Yan was a little embarrassed. After all, this was his first time marrying a wife. He grinned and said, a few days ago, my family arranged a wife for me. The wedding date has also been set. It's this year on the 8th of the 12th lunar month. Sect Master, if you aren't afraid of the hardships, you can come to our Swallow Dock for a wedding. Take it as an early invitation. Sect Master Taichung roared with laughter as he looked at Fong Yan and said, all right, if it's convenient, I'll head to Swallow Dock for a wedding. I've already forgotten how many years it's been since I've had a drink. I really miss that taste, other than marriage. Apart from marriage. Fong Yan thought about it seriously and said, it should be to treat Grandpa's illness. My grandpa's legs aren't good, and he hasn't been able to get out of his wheelchair for years. My master said that the Taoist's old wood meat spring can cure him, allowing him to stand up again. Now that I've broken through to the water overflow realm, I plan on attempting to treat his legs. If I can let him stand up again, it will mean a lot to me. Your filial piety is extremely valuable, the headmaster said with a gratified expression. Fong Yan, watch carefully. As Sect Master Taichung spoke, he flicked his sleeves across the teacup in front of him. The steaming hot tea instantly froze, as if it had just been taken out of the freezer. Fong Yan widened his eyes and stared unblinkingly at the hierarch's wrist. Let's wait and see. The headmaster of Taichung said. Fong Yan saw a white light flashing in his palm, as if he was holding a lightning bolt in his palm. Sect leader Taichung's sleeves brushed past the bowl of iced tea. The ice instantly melted, and the tea was still steaming. Sect Master Taichung acted as though he hadn't done anything, but Fong Yan knew that he had done a lot. He had done things that many warriors could not do in their lifetime, including Fong Yan who had entered the water overflow realm. Do you understand now? Taichung Sect Master looked at Fong Yan and asked. Fong Yan nodded, then shook his head. Sect Master Taichung smiled and said, close your eyes. Fong Yan did as he was told. Sect Master Taichung's hand brushed past the steaming hot tea, and the tea froze. Then he brushed past the iced tea, and the iced tea melted and emitted steam again. It was exactly the same process as before. Do you understand now? Sect Master Taichung asked again. Understood. Fong Yan, who had his eyes closed, said aloud. Understanding doesn't mean you understand. Without the sun, how can there be ice? Without death, how can there be life? Without withered wood, how can there be spring? Sect Master Taichung smiled at Fong Yan, you can understand everything. You were able to comprehend the Grand Tao and break through to the water overflow realm at such a young age, so you will naturally understand the profoundness of withered wood returning to spring. Fong Yan bowed deeply to Sect Master Taichung and said gratefully, thank you, Sect Master, I didn't think you would teach me such an ultimate art. Humans are alive, ultimate arts are dead. Only when a dead ultimate art is in the hands of a living person, and it can be used to cure and save people, can it be used to its full potential. Otherwise, a human dying is like an extinguished lamp, no matter how great the ultimate art is, no one can use it. Wouldn't that be a great regret? You are right, Sect Master. Fong Yan bowed again to accept the teachings. In front of this old man, he couldn't make any jokes. Every word he said was something he had to listen to, and after listening, he had to seriously think about it. In the future, Fong Yan will not hide anything. I will teach everything I know to those who can, so that Hua Xia's ultimate art can be passed down from generation to generation, so that the flame of martial arts will never be extinguished, immeasurable heavenly lord. Sect Master Tai Chang's face was full of joy. He said, for the best. When Fong Yan came out of Sect Master Tai Chang's room, his master Tian Jizi was waiting in the courtyard. How is it? Tian Jizi asked. Very good. Fong Yan didn't hide his joy in front of Tian Jizi. He said, the sect master is a very kind and generous old man. Tian Jizi looked at Fong Yan with a pensive look. He could understand kindness, but what did being generous mean? The sect master taught me the withered tree that gives spring. Fong Yan couldn't help but boast. Just like a child who got a beautiful toy, he couldn't help but want to let the people around him know about it. Tian Jizi was overjoyed. He asked, really? Really? Fong Yan nodded. Tian Jizi's expression was solemn. He looked at Fong Yan and said, the withered tree that gives spring is of great significance to our Taoism. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it is our Taoism's guardian treasure. Furthermore, this withered tree that gives spring was personally taught by the current sect master. And then? You became the sect master's disciple? Tian Jizi stared at Fong Yan and said. But I am your disciple. Fong Yan said with a determined expression. Regardless of whether the sect master is the sect master or not, I only recognize you as my master. How can I change my master just because of the difference in status? I, Fong Yan, can't do such a thing, and I don't want to do it. Tian Jizi smiled bitterly and said, but I didn't teach you the withered tree that gives spring. That's right, why didn't you teach me the withered tree that gives spring? Fong Yan looked at Tian Jizi with disdain and said, we are already master and disciple, isn't it natural for me to teach my disciple? Look at the sect master, even though this is the first time we met, he already gave me such a great gift. No wonder the sect master was able to become the sect master. Look at his heart, his spirit. Tian Jizi was about to cry from Fong Yan's questions and said, other than the sect master, no one else has the right to teach me the withered tree that gives spring. Why? Because, the person who obtains the withered tree that gives spring will become the sect master's personal disciple. And after the sect master ascends, the disciple who has the ability to use the withered tree that gives spring will have the chance to become the sect master. Fong Yan opened his eyes wide and said, in other words, that's right. Tian Jizi nodded with absolute certainty. Even if the sect master hands the entire sect master to you, no one will think that it's something surprising. Fong Yan was stunned for a long time, then turned around and walked into the room. What are you doing? Tian Jizi asked. I'm going to see if there's anything else master needs me to serve. I'm very good at serving tea and pouring water. Fong Yan said aloud. Tian Jizi felt like his heart was being cut by a knife. Didn't you say that you, Fong Yan, definitely wouldn't do such a thing, and you don't want to do it? Just what exactly are you doing right now? Behind the red wall, the old man was leisurely drinking tea. At their level of cultivation and status, there was no longer a need to hone their muscles and bones. Instead, it was more about enlightenment. 1,000 years passed in a blink of an eye. Sometimes, a single enlightenment could surpass countless predecessors. This was the power of the heavenly axiom. Gong Sun Chi's leg injury had completely healed, and he was practicing the sword-drawing technique under the watchful eyes of his master. The last mission had made him realize his own shortcomings. A great teacher produces a great disciple. He had a master like the dragon god, and he himself was talented and intelligent, so he would definitely be the #1 expert of the younger generation. But what made him ashamed was that in that dense forest, his partner Fang Yan's performance was far better than his. Whether it was his ability to adapt on the spot, his ability to fight on the battlefield, or his perseverance and fearlessness of death, they were all beyond his reach. It could be said that if it weren't for Fang Yan's extraordinary performance, the two of them would have died in that devil's forest. The most unacceptable thing was that he was carried out of the forest by Fang Yan. This would be the shame of his life. After his physical recovery, Gong Sun Chi entered an intense period of physical recovery and hard training. He hoped that he could have a greater improvement in the shortest time possible. With a goal, one would be more motivated. Let's stop for a while. He held the teacup and shouted. Gong Sun Chi drew his sword and then sheathed it. It was unbelievably fast, and one could not hear any sound of metal colliding during the process. Gong Sun Chi placed the sword on the sword rack and pulled a towel to wipe the sweat on his forehead. Your opponent is Fang Yan. The dragon god looked at his beloved disciple and asked. Gong Sun Chi was not without talent, nor was it because he did not work hard. At his age, he had achieved such achievements in swordsmanship. It was indeed amazing. However, when comparing goods, one had to throw them away. When comparing oneself to others, it was infuriating. Yes. Gong Sun Chi did not hide his ambition in front of his master. I want to surpass him. It's very difficult, the dragon god said expressionlessly. Master, Gong Sun Chi's face was ashen. He was not angry that his master said he was not as good as Fang Yan, but he knew very well that if his master said it would be difficult for him to surpass Fang Yan, it might really be difficult for him to surpass Fang Yan. His opponent is me. The dragon god said with a smile, in other words, I am the opponent he must defeat in the end. Chapter 829. Although Gong Sun Chi acknowledged Fang Yan's ability and felt that he was not just slightly better than him, he still found it hard to accept comparing Fang Yan to his most respected master, the divine dragon. Master, what makes Fang Yan worthy of being your opponent? Gong Sun Chi asked bluntly. I know his skills. He's just a little stronger than me. The difference between me and Master is more than 1,000 miles. Compared to Master, he's like a grain of rice competing with the moon. He's just asking to be humiliated. Ku Fengming knew how his disciple felt. He originally thought that Fang Yan was his destined opponent, an enemy that he strived to defeat. And he had always been working hard for this goal. But now, he was telling him that it would be difficult for him to surpass Fang Yan, and that Fang Yan's opponent would be him. It was really a blow to him. I've received news that Fang Yan has obtained the Taiji diagram's heritage and has just broken through to the water overflow realm. Ku Fengming said casually, as if it was something unimportant. The water overflow is the highest esoteric of Taiji. It's similar to the heavenly Tao realm. Once he enters the realm, he'll be on the golden path. His future is limitless. What? Gong Sun Chi was shocked. How is that possible? How long has it been? How old is he? It was no wonder Gong Sun Chi was so shocked. They had just returned from a mission. At that time, Fang Yan was not too far away from him. The two of them stood on the same starting line and sprinted forward. His injured leg had just recovered, and his opponent had already stepped into another realm. It was impossible for him to catch up to Fang Yan's footsteps. He could only look up at Fang Yan's tall back. It was a feeling that made him feel helpless. A night of enlightenment can lead to a leap of 1,000 miles. How can you look at people with old eyes? Ku Fengming reprimanded. Now that he's finally grown into a towering tree, the feud between me and the Fang family will finally be continued and inherited. He wants to challenge Master. No, I want to challenge him. Shenlong said bitterly. I've been trapped in this red wall for too long. I just want to find a chance to move. But my old friends are all mysterious and hard to find. Fortunately, Fong Yen came out and gave me some motivation to move. Fong Yen had just reached the water overflow realm and was full of confidence and fighting spirit. Go meet him on my behalf and set a date for the battle. I think he'll accept. Master, even if Fong Yen breaks through to the water overflow state, he's still no match for you. Gong Sun Chi looked at his master and wanted to speak up for Fong Yen. After all, Fong Yen carried him out from the Devil Forest. When he first met Fong Yen, he felt that Fong Yen was a bastard. During that mission, he felt that Fong Yen was a good person who was a bastard. He could have left on his own. He didn't have to bring her along, but he didn't give up on her, no matter how dangerous and difficult the process of their escape was. Challenging Fong Yen at this time is an unfair fight. Why don't we give him more time? In your opinion, the longer you live, the higher your cultivation will be. Ming shook his head with a wry smile and said, it depends on luck, will, and ambition. This was the key to victory. Of course, the strength of both sides had to be evenly matched, and the difference couldn't be too great. Don't say anything more, just do as I say. Yes, Master, Gong Sun Chi replied helplessly. Just as he was about to pack up and leave, Qing now pushed open the door of the small courtyard and walked in. She glanced at Gong Sun Chi, then walked straight to the front of the Dragon God and said, Mr. Dragon God, Fong Yen is here and wants to see you. Fong Yen is here? Gong Sun Chi asked anxiously. He had just been talking to his master about Fong Yen and was thinking of ways to help him reject his master's challenge. Who would have thought that Fong Yen would come knocking on his door? Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted after entering the water overflow state? Did he think that he could challenge his own master just like that? What an arrogant fellow. Yes. Qing now looked back at Gong Sun Chi, not understanding why he was so agitated. Fong Yen has just met the young chief and wants to see Mr. Dragon God after this. Ming nodded and said, Fong Yen has broken through to the water overflow state, so the country should pay attention. Invite him in. Yes. Qing now turned and left, and soon brought Fong Yen in. When Gong Sun Chi saw Fong Yen again, he found that his image and aura had indeed changed greatly. In the past, Fong Yen spoke and laughed casually, but when he was angry, he was sharp and aggressive. Moreover, his behavior was not mature enough, and he always gave off the feeling that he was trying his best to take advantage of others. Now, Fong Yen was handsome, refreshing, and looked like a beautiful landscape painting. The way he walked was elegant, the way he smiled was charming, and even if he did not say a word, people could feel his inner self-restraint and unfathomable cultivation base. Now, Fong Yen looked more amiable, but when you wanted to bully him, there was an oppressive feeling of having nowhere to exert force and being guarded against everywhere. Fong Yen, what are you doing here? Gong Sun Chi blocked in front of his master, and desperately winked at Fong Yen. Hurry up and get lost, or it will be too late. Fong Yen understood Gong Sun Chi's intentions. After that life and death experience together, he also regarded Gong Sun Chi as his own brother. However, some words had to be said, and some things had to be done. Only by following one's heart could one achieve great things. The water overflow state was even more particular about naturalness. Challenging the Dragon God and avenging the Azure Dragon's humiliation was the most persistent belief in his heart, and it was also the mission he wanted to complete the most. The old drunkard was not here, and challenging the Dragon God had become his destiny. He would not run away, and he could not run away. I'm here to issue a challenge. Fong Yen looked directly at the Dragon God's tough life, and said with a smile, it's a long-cherished wish of many years, I hope that the Dragon God will be born first. The Azure Dragon turned pale with fright. She did not expect that Fong Yen would take the initiative to challenge the Dragon God, Ever since the dragon god entered the Red Wall and became the Xian department's high priest, no one had dared to challenge him. Feng Yan actually dared to do such a thing. Naturally. The dragon god laughed, looked at Feng Yan and said, Feng Yan, are you so confident that you can defeat me after entering the water overflow state? I'm not confident, Feng Yan said very frankly, but I know that I'm in my best condition now. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't know how far I can grow. But I feel that my body is in great shape. It's like I can kill a tiger with a punch, and I can knock down a mountain with a kick. Mr. Dragon God has been famous for a long time, and his cultivation base is unfathomable, but I can't wait, and I can't afford to wait. Because I know that when I'm training hard, Mr. Dragon God is also improving. I can't wait until you're too old to swing your fist or pick up your sword before I challenge you. This is an insult to you, and an insult to me as well. It's also an insult to the old drunkard. If he knew that I did something like that, he would definitely scold me. Exchanging pointers in martial arts requires luck, courage, and willpower. I have the will to fight, I have the courage to die rather than retreat, and the rest is up to luck. My luck has never been bad, and people with bad luck would not be able to enter the water overflow state at this age, so, I want to take a gamble. When I feel that I'm the strongest, I want to challenge you. Gong Sun Chi stared at Feng Yan, dumbfounded, and thought to himself, this kid said the same thing as Master just said. Courage, will, and luck, that's what Master said just now. He looked at his disciple Gong Sun Chi and said, now do you understand the difference between you two? Gong Sun Chi's face was ashen. Who would insult his own disciple's master in front of others like this? However, Gong Sun Chi could not be bothered to be angry over such a matter. He was burning with anxiety. His master was a famous Heavenly Dao realm expert for many years, and Feng Yan was considered a top expert who had entered the water overflow state. In a battle with such an opponent, he would either be injured or dead, and it would be very difficult to show mercy. Moreover, because the Azure Dragon did not underestimate his enemy, Feng Yan would definitely attack with hatred. When that happened, the two of them would not rest until one of them was dead. Gong Sun Chi did not wish for his master to lose, but he did not wish for his friend to die either. In his heart, he still felt that Feng Yan, who had just entered the water overflow state, was no match for his unfathomable master. The dragon god looked at Feng Yan with a gratified expression and said, that's how a man should be. I accept your challenge. Thank you, Mr. Dragon God. Feng Yan bowed in thanks. When he straightened his body, he looked at the dragon god and asked, what time does Mr. Dragon God think is suitable? Time is of the essence. Qianming waved his hand casually. As long as it's convenient for you, I'll accompany you anytime. How about 7 days later? Feng Yan said. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm getting married on the 8th of the 12th lunar month, so it's best if we spar before the wedding. That way, if I die, the lady still has a chance to remarry. Don't you think so? Feng Yan was still a little selfish. He was afraid that it would be tough for him to challenge the dragon god after marriage. If he lost his life, wouldn't Yi Ro become a widow? Therefore, he put the final battle before their wedding. In this way, if he accidentally died, Yi Ro would still be a virgin, and she could still marry another handsome young man. He would feel a little uncomfortable in his heart, but as long as Yi Ro was happy, it would be fine. Qianming laughed out loud and said, interesting. How interesting. We'll do as you say. 7 days later, we'll fight at Feng Mountain. The time was set by Feng Yan, so he had no objections to Qianming's choice of location. It's a promise. Feng Yan said firmly, 7 days later, we'll fight at Feng Mountain. Chapter 830. Feng Yan left, and Gong Sun Chi offered to walk him out. Under Qing Niao's stare, as if she was looking at a lunatic. The two walked towards the side door outside the red wall. "Are you crazy?" Before they got far, Gong Sun Chi couldn't help but complain. "Do you know what you're doing?" "I know." Challenging one of the three dragons of Hua Xia, the dragon god, Fang Yan had a calm smile on his face. Gong Sun Chi didn't like this kind of expression. In the past, Fang Yan's smile was very cunning and proud, like a fox that took advantage of others. Gong Sun Chi felt even more friendly towards this kind of smile. At this time, he looked very mysterious, and no one knew what he was thinking. He was not down to earth, and naturally made people feel distant. His smile was like a constant reminder that he was now a water overflow state master, and this was the expression of a water overflow state master: "You'll die." Gong Sun Chi stared at Fang Yan's smiling face and said fiercely. Fang Yan looked at Gong Sun Chi and asked, "You also think I'm no match for your master? Don't you know that you're no match for him? Do you still need to ask other people's feelings about this?" Fang Yan nodded and said, "Your master has been famous for a long time, and his cultivation is unfathomable. What's more terrifying is that no one has fought him for the past 10 years, and no one knows how much he has grown. Against such a master, I really don't have any chance of winning." "Then why do you still want to do this?" "You can choose not to do it, or you can do it later." Gong Sun Chi anxiously tried to dissuade him. It was obvious that he was really thinking about Fang Yan's safety. Fang Yan stopped, looked at Gong Sun Chi with sincere eyes, and said, "In the past, I thought the same as you. I can choose not to do it, or I can do it later. Why do something that I have no confidence in? Why do something that disregards your own safety? I'm going to get married, and I really like the woman I'm going to marry. I want to be with her every day, and we'll have several children. That's my ideal life." Gong Sun Chi didn't say anything. He just quietly waited for Fang Yan to continue. "But, I can't now," Fang Yan said with a smile. "I stood in front of a huge vat for a long time and thought about many things. There were many contradictory ideas, and those contradictory laws collided and killed each other. One side triumphed over the other, just like one country triumphed over another. I became the king of the victorious kingdom. I comprehended the heavenly Tao and stepped into the doorstep of the water overflow state. However, once you enter that realm, there's no turning back. It's just like when you become the king of a kingdom, you can no longer step down by yourself, because once you lose the protection of that position, you may be killed by the rebels. You can only brace yourself and continue forward, no matter what you encounter in front of you. You have to walk forward bravely and fearlessly. You also know about the grudge between the dragon god and the one in my family. In the battle between the two, the one in my family suffered a crushing defeat, and because his meridians were cut, he became a cripple. I grew up with him, and almost my entire life was spent with him. I could see how miserable his life was, and I could feel how sorrowful his heart was. He ate wine every day and slept with wine. That kind of life would have been better off dead. If he had died in that battle, at least he would have maintained the illustrious reputation of the Azure Dragon. However, he didn't die, and was still stubbornly living on. When everyone mentions the Azure Dragon's name, they would sigh in regret, saying that a heavenly son of heaven was destroyed in a day, but in their hearts, they were mocking his current situation. Most people would just ignore him when they saw him. Who would care about the opinion of a cripple? Can you imagine, how did he survive such a life? The Fang family is few in number, with only one son for several generations. Back when grandfather was healthy, he had dozens of disciples, and it was considered a formidable force. Later, grandfather's legs were crippled, and most of his disciples left, never to be heard from again. There were a few who stayed, but they didn't have the ability to prop up the Fang family. After the old drunkard ascended the heavenly Tao, the Fang family's reputation changed greatly. However, when he perished and became a cripple, he would receive 10 times, 100 times more mockery and blows than before. my father was killed at the entrance of the village. I was one step too late. If I had arrived earlier, I would have been able to save him. Because of this thought, I stayed in Swallow Dock to observe mourning for my father for 3 years. I felt too guilty, and I blamed myself, but what was the old drunkard thinking? If his tendons hadn't been cut by your master, if he was still a Heavenly Tao expert, would my father not have died? Would the Fong family not be in such a difficult situation? After my father died, he disappeared. According to the medical fanatic, he went to find some ice dragon's blood to replenish his meridians. I don't believe that such a thing exists in this world, but I hope that he does, because if that's the case, he will return. Otherwise, with his stubborn temper and proud character, he would rather be buried in that land of extreme cold than return. I always wanted to do something for him. Challenging the divine dragon was an arduous task. In the past, I only dared to think about it in secret, and was even too embarrassed to say it out loud. I was afraid that your master would hear me and kill me with his sword. I always thought, I don't believe that I can't catch up to you, I don't believe that you won't grow old, you won't grow weak, you won't die. That became a demon in my heart, a thorn in my side. In front of that huge vat, I understood. If I had fear in my heart, I would never be able to defeat your master. I would never be able to avenge the old drunkard. The Tao of man is the heavenly Tao. If you go against your own thoughts, then you will be going against the heavenly Tao. Not only will your cultivation level not improve, you might even regress, because you have a mental demon. So, you were able to ascend to the overflow realm because you made up your mind to challenge my master? Gong Sun Chi asked. No. Fong Yen shook his head. I was able to ascend to the overflowing state because my thoughts were clear. I understood the things that I couldn't understand before. I made my final decision on the things that had always made me waver. Of course, the reason I challenged your master was also to make my thoughts clear. If I don't do this, if I keep thinking about postponing and refusing, then I will eventually lose the courage and opportunity to challenge him. I understand, Gong Sun Chi thought for a while, then looked at Fong Yen and said, I won't give you my blessing. I understand, Fong Yen nodded. He patted Gong Sun Chi's shoulder and said, I'm already very grateful that you chased after me and told me this. But Gong Sun Chi thought for a bit and said, I don't want you to fail either. Fong Yen squinted his eyes and smiled, then turned around and left. Clear thoughts. Gong Sun Chi looked at Fong Yan's elegant back and muttered, Master wanted to battle you because he wanted his thoughts to be clear. You came to challenge my master because you wanted your thoughts to be clear. But do you know that the way you are doing it is making it hard for my thoughts to be clear? The news that Fong Yen wanted to challenge the dragon god spread to a certain group of people in Beijing very quickly. Is that kid crazy? Why would he dare to challenge the divine dragon? A horse doesn't know what's good for him. With his mediocre skills, he dares to challenge the 3 dragons of Huaxiao. He's far from it. There's going to be a good show. The Heavenly Tao realm expert who destroyed the Fong family years ago, Mo Qinglong, probably won't show any mercy this time, right? There was a lot of discussion, but no one believed that Fong Yen could defeat the divine dragon and become the final winner of this battle. The Jiang family mansion. Jiang Shifu looked at his grandson, General Xing, who was sitting in front of him, and said, It seems like the news is true. A few old friends in the martial world called me, and Tigress also has some connections. That brat really went to challenge the dragon god. General Xing grinned. Grandpa, what's there to be afraid of? Isn't this good news for us? Since Fong Yen took the initiative to issue a challenge to Mr. Dragon God, only death awaits him. If Fong Yen dies or gets injured by Mr. Dragon God's hands, our Jiang family will be able to reap the benefits. Previously, the Fong family's Imo Qingdi was crippled by Mr. Dragon God after his tendons were broken, and the Fong family was bullied and humiliated. Until now, they have not recovered. If something like this happens again, it will not be anything new. Have you thought about it? Jiang Shifu looked at General Xing with a serious expression and said, "Why does Fong Yan want to challenge the Divine Dragon? What makes him think that he can challenge the Divine Dragon? You've interacted with him many times. Do you think he's crazy? Or is there something wrong with his IQ?" "I've heard." General Xing knew that the old man in front of him was angry, so he toned down his attitude and said, "Fong Yan broke through the water overflow state and became a powerhouse that can compete with the heavenly path state. If he didn't do this and didn't challenge the Divine Dragon, our Jiang family would have to adjust our attitude towards him. However, he's courting death by challenging Mr. Dragon. How could he be Mr. Dragon's opponent? Strangling talents is exactly what Mr. Dragon God likes to do." "What if?" Jiang Shifu asked. "What?" General Xing did not understand the meaning behind his grandfather's words. If Fong Yan defeats the Divine Dragon, if Fong Yan wins this battle, Jiang Shifu looked at General Xing with a sharp gaze and asked, "Have you thought about what the Jiang family should do when that happens?" Chapter 831. General Xing looked at his grandfather with a pensive look and said, "Grandfather, are you worried about Fong Yan, the threat he might bring to the Jiang family? One lives in sorrow and perishes in peace." General Shifu did not hide his thoughts as he said, "Try your best to think of every possibility, so that we won't panic when the time comes. If we don't understand the danger Fong Yan poses, as well as the immense influence a heavenly Dao realm expert can bring, it will be a true disaster for our Jiang family. Grandfather, even if he reaches the water overflow realm, he won't be able to live for long. You also know that he just challenged the Divine Dragon and lived a tough life. In a week, he will perish. When that happens, is there a need for us to worry about a dead person? Or perhaps, just as grandfather worries, Fong Yan managed to survive after defeating the Divine Dragon. Could he be so lawless as to unleash a massacre on our Jiang family? The Jiang family is not their Fong family. If they dare do such a thing, it will cause a stir in the entire Yan capital. How can such a responsibility be borne by a heavenly Dao realm expert? That's not the only thing I'm worried about. The Fong family doesn't just have one heavenly Dao realm expert, but two. Fong Yan is about to marry the Yi family, and the Yi family's Yi Wen is also a heavenly Dao realm expert. If they were to really get married, how would the Jiang family fare?" General Xing said with a wry smile. Before it began, no one expected such a thing to happen. Back then, the Fong family could not withstand a single blow, and they thought that they were only devouring a sheep. But no one expected that their Fong family's heavenly Dao realm expert would appear like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. The sheep tore off its disguise and turned into a ferocious wolf that counterattacked. General Xing looked at General Shifu and said, "Grandfather, you never expected such a thing to happen, right?" General Shifu pondered for a long while before saying, "Do you have any good countermeasures?" "The enemy of our enemy is our friend." General Xing said in a deep voice, "The arrow has been shot, and there's no turning back. Regret is unnecessary, and an apology won't be of any use. Now, our Jiang family and Fong Yan are in an irreconcilable situation. Now that things have come to this, we can only place our bets on the Dragon God side." Jiang Shifu thought for a while, then said, "Help me make an appointment with the Dragon God. It's been hard on my life. Just tell him that I want to treat him to chives flatbread." "Okay." General Xing nodded. "Grandpa, I'm afraid there's one more person that you have to meet in person." "HM." Jiang Shifu looked thoughtfully at General Xing. He had lived in seclusion for many years, taking care of the flowers and plants in this courtyard. If it wasn't an important matter, he wouldn't meet anyone easily. Moreover, after so many years, the number of people he had met could be counted on one hand. General Xing should understand his habits, but he said that there was someone he had to see. What kind of person was that? Grandfather. General Xing's eyes were filled with determination as he looked at Jiang Shifu and said, "We cannot lose this battle. This is very good." Jiang Shifu looked at his grandson with a gratified expression and said, "I believe in you. Then I'll get to work." The general stood up and said, "I've asked Mr. Dragon God to come over for some pancakes tomorrow night. He probably won't reject me. Go." Old man Jiang Shifu waved his hand and said, "Be careful, don't alert anyone." "I understand." General Xing nodded. At this time, the Jiang family's elderly man and Dragon God were to meet. If Dragon God really killed or crippled Fang Yan after the battle, it would be bad for the Jiang family's reputation. However, General Xing didn't think that this was a bad thing. If Dragon God killed or crippled Fang Yan after meeting his grandfather, how would the outside world view this matter? Yes, it would have a bad impact on the Jiang family's reputation. They might even suspect that the Jiang family was the mastermind. However, shouldn't those people be fearful of the Jiang family because of this? If they could link the Dragon God's hard work with the Jiang family, that would be the best. After Jiang Junling walked far away, the tigress returned to the elderly man. "Old master." The tigress stood respectfully in front of the elderly man. "Make a trip to Huaqing and meet Shangxin personally. Tell her that I miss her and ask her to visit when she has the time." Old man Jiang Shifu said. The tigress looked at old man Jiang with a surprised expression. She didn't expect him to make such a decision. Old man Jiang Shifu's expression was calm, but his voice was a little sad. He said, "The Jiang family's younger generation is incompetent. The last chance to break out of this situation may lie on Shangxin alone. Yes, I will definitely tell Miss Shangxin about old master's longing." The tigress bowed and replied. However, she felt a little sour in her heart. The majestic and incomparably huge Jiang family had actually reached the stage where they needed to prepare a backup plan. "You actually went to challenge Dragon God?" Yi Daoling's face was full of anger as he asked directly. He didn't even invite him to take a seat and instruct the servants to pour him tea. Fang Yan stood in the living room of Yi Daoling's house and looked at the withered ginkgo tree in the courtyard. He smiled and said, "Yes, I didn't expect the news to spread so quickly." "Fang Yan, do you know what you are doing?" Yi Daoling wanted to throw the teacup in his hand at him. "You are challenging Dragon God, Dragon God. I don't need to say what kind of opponent Dragon God is. You know this better than me. Also, after he defeated your senior brother Mo Qingdi decades ago, everyone in the world thought that he was the #1 expert in Huaxia. Even the mysterious black dragon wasn't his match. Why did you find such an opponent?" Yi Zi sat beside her father and looked at Fang Yan with her beautiful eyes without blinking. This guy is actually an expert in the water overflow state. He was always smiling, he was cynical, and he was always beaten to death by his sister. However, he was humorous, knowledgeable, filial, and loyal. His friends were willing to die for him. He was attentive and cared for his family. He worked hard to protect his family and did not hesitate to fight to the death to protect his family. Such a man was about to become her brother-in-law. Hearing that her father's temper was out of control, Yi Zi finally came back to her senses. She hugged her father's arm and signaled him not to damage his body. Yi Zi looked at Fang Yan and said, "Fang Yan, don't mind him. My dad is doing this for your own good. If it was someone else, he wouldn't be so angry." "Yes, yes." Ruan Jing nodded repeatedly and said, "If it was me, the boss wouldn't be so angry." Yi Zi glared at Wan Jing and signaled him not to talk nonsense. Then she looked back at Fang Yan and said, "You are going to marry my sister, how can you still do such a dangerous thing? If there is an accident, what will my sister do?" Yi Daoling also knew that his temper was too bad. After being comforted by his daughter, his mood was much better. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yan and said, "Fang Yan, don't blame me for being too strict with you. We are a family now. Say whatever you want. There is no need to hide it like before. I always thought you were a smart person, the smartest person in the entire Swallow Dock. But I have to say that your choice this time is very unwise and disappointing. Yes, I know you entered the water overflow state, but do you think you can definitely defeat the dragon god's hard work just because you entered the water overflow state? You have the heart to avenge the enemy. This is very good and admirable. But, can't you bear it a little longer? Wait a little longer. You have endured for so many years and waited. Why can't you wait a few days? Can't you wait a few years? You have achieved such achievements at such a young age. Your future is limitless. No one knows how far you can go in the future. What is the path after the heavenly path? What is the next realm after the water overflow state? When you find the answers to these questions, then challenge the dragon god's hard work. Isn't the success rate higher? You are playing with your life. Not only are you using your life to play with others, but you also don't care about Wenruru's happiness in the future. Now everyone in the world knows that you and Yi Ruru are going to get married, and the invitations have been sent out. In the end, a few days before the marriage, you ran to fight with your life. It would be fine if you won. The key is that you will die if you fight with your life. At that time, what about our Ruru? Will she get married in the future? I know it's not good. Fang Yan looked at Yi Daoling and apologized sincerely. I know it's wrong. I'm sorry to many people, my family, Yi family, and the person I'm most sorry to is Wenruru, but I also have a reason to do this. What reason do you have to do this? I'm afraid that if I don't do it this time, I won't be able to do it in the future. Fang Yan said with a smile. At least, this is the time that I feel the best about myself and the time that I'm most likely to succeed. Why do you think you can defeat the #1 master of Huaxia? Based on my feelings. Fang Yan said with a smile. I don't think I can definitely win, I just feel that there is a chance of winning. Fang Yan. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yan sharply and said, if you agree, I can find a way to help you cancel this battle. Absolutely not. Fang Yan looked at Yi Daoling and said, morale cannot be lost, so you're determined to do this? Have you discussed it with Wenruru? Does she agree with you to do such a dangerous thing? She didn't discuss it with me. The courtyard door was pushed open, and a girl in black strode in. Chapter 832. It was getting colder and colder in Yanjing. The weather forecast said that the first snow of the year would come in a few days. Of course, the weather forecast didn't specify which day it was. After all, it wasn't easy for them. Her long hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. Even if she didn't wear any makeup, people could still feel her breathtaking beauty. Yi Ro's temperament was very calm, but her face gave people a feeling of coldness. She was like an iceberg, beautiful, but always made people worry that she was cold to the bone and not close to the people. Of course, compared with her, Qinitian was even less close to the people. Qinitian was very warm, but too warm. Her beauty was like the sun in the hottest days, with millions of golden rays, without any concealment, and without mercy, unscrupulously burning the earth and people's eyes. But, why did Yi Ro come at this time? Seeing Yi Ro coming, Yezi quickly ran to greet her, took the initiative to hold Yi Ro's arm, and said with a smile, Sister, you're here. I knew you would come. Only you can stop Fang Yan. Yi Daoling also grinned, looked at Yi Ro and said, Ro is here. Did Yezi call you? Quickly persuade Fang Yan not to do such a stupid thing. Isn't it good to have a good birthday? There is no need to make things difficult for yourself. Yi Ro walked straight to Fang Yan, looked at Fang Yan and asked, You want to challenge the dragon god? Fang Yan looked straight into Yi Ro's eyes, nodded and said, Yes, I have to fight. Why didn't you discuss it with me in advance? I was afraid you wouldn't agree. Why 7 days before the wedding? I was afraid I would die. Yi Ro stopped talking, and her beautiful eyes stared at Fang Yan without blinking, as if she wanted to see how many hairs there were on his face. Go back with me. Yi Ro said expressionlessly. Okay. Fang Yan nodded. So, Yi Ro took Fang Yan's hand and turned to leave. Fang Yan smiled at Yezi and followed Yi Ro out of the Yi family's courtyard. Yi Daoling and Yezi were stunned. Yi Daoling looked at Yezi and asked, Just like that? Just like that? Yezi nodded. Just like that? Yes. Why did they leave? Is the problem solved? I don't know. It should be solved. Sister Ro is here. According to her character, she will definitely not agree to this matter. Besides, Fang Yan can't beat Sister Ro. At most, he can break his legs. Yi Daoling rubbed the rim of his cup in annoyance and said, Even if you want to leave, shouldn't you tell me? No matter what, I'm still their elder. Aren't they not behaving like juniors at all? Yi nodded fiercely and echoed, Yes, it's too much. Yi Daoling looked at Yi with a face full of smiles and said, My own daughter is still the best. It seems that only us, father and daughter, will be eating at home today. I'll ask the kitchen to make a few more dishes. Let's drink the remaining half bottle of Mao Tai. I can't bear to drink it when you are not at home. Dad, I can't accompany you for lunch today. Yezi said with embarrassment, I want to go back to Swallow Dock. Ancestor called me yesterday and said that she misses me. She asked me to go back to see her. I also want to see whether Sister Ruru has intercepted Fang Yan. How about letting Wanjing eat with you at home? I'm willing to eat with the chief. Wanjing tried hard to force a smile on his face and said, But Yezi, it's not safe to drive back alone, right? How about I drive her back to Swallow Dock? Get lost. Yi Daoling slammed the cup on the tea table and waved his hand. Get lost. Dad, I will go back to accompany Ancestor. I will say hello to Ancestor for you. Yezi stuck out her tongue and ran outside quickly. Ruanjing looked at Yi Daoling carefully and said, You are the chief. You told me to get lost. I can't disobey the order, can I? After that, she ran outside like a rabbit. Yi Daoling looked at the empty house and suddenly felt a little lonely. He thought about it and grabbed the landline next to him to call his wife. Come back after work at noon. The child is not at home. Let's go out to eat something good. Yi Ro drove, and Fang Yan sat in the passenger seat. Yi Ro didn't speak, and Fang Yan also remained silent. There was a song playing in the car, a song that sounded a little sad. If it's too late before dark, I'm going to forget your eyes, spend a lifetime, can't finish a dream, waking up from a dream. This life is absurd. South Mountain, North Autumn is sad. South Mountain has a pile of grain. South Wind whispers, North Sea has a tombstone. This song is very nice. Fang Yan broke the silence and said with a smile. Although it sounds sad, the feelings in it are very sincere. There is a couple in love. The man lives in North Sea and the woman lives in South Mountain. They are in a long-distance relationship. One day, the man told the woman that he likes someone else and wants to break up with the woman. The woman was heartbroken, but she still accepted the arrangement. The man didn't fall in love with another woman. He was just sick. It was a genetic disease in his family. At this time, it was difficult for him to even breathe. Few of his family lived past 30 years old, and it was difficult for him to break this curse. He was about to die. He didn't want to drag that woman down because he felt that he couldn't give him happiness. Yi-ro said calmly as if she was telling a story. Of course, she was indeed telling a story. And then Fong Yan was attracted by Yi-ro's story and asked. There is no then. Yi-ro said. Fong Yan was anxious and said, how can you do this? How can there be a story without an ending? Aren't you a eunuch? Are you touched? Yi-ro ignored Fong Yan's doubt and asked. Yes. Fong Yan nodded. I am touched. That man is too great. What about that woman? Yi-ro asked. Woman? Fong Yan thought for a while and said, he has a woman who loves him very much, and Fong Yan couldn't continue. He understood the deeper meaning of Yi-ro's story. Do you think that woman will be grateful after knowing the truth? Will she thank that man for hiding it from her? Will she thank that man for letting her go? Gentle. Afraid that I would be worried and would challenge the dragon god without discussing with me. Worried that I would be a widow, so he specially chose the date of the battle 7 days before the wedding. Shouldn't I be moved like that woman? I didn't do it for you. That man didn't do it to make that woman feel touched. Maybe he thought that was the way he could give her happiness. I just thought that if I couldn't come back, you would still have a chance. A chance to marry someone else. Fong Yan remained silent. He couldn't have an answer to such a question. Is this the Yi-ro in your eyes? I know you won't choose that, but I hope you can choose that. Fong Yan said in a low voice. Since the battle with the dragon god was a foregone conclusion, there were some things that needed to be clarified. I have a reason to fight, but you also have an excuse to give up. I know there are some things that you aren't looking forward to, but standing in my shoes, it doesn't mean that I won't do it just because you don't look forward to it. Ka-cha. Yi-ro suddenly turned the steering wheel, and the car sped towards the wheat field by the side of the road. When they reached the depths of the wheat field, Yi-ro slammed on the brakes, and the car came to a screeching halt. Yi-ro turned to look at Fong Yan and said, I'm also at the Heavenly Tao realm. I can completely understand why you made such a decision. The arrow is knocked on the bow, and it has to be fired. But shouldn't you discuss it with me before making such a decision? You said that you didn't discuss it with me beforehand because you were worried that I wouldn't agree to it. But even if I didn't agree to it, since you had already decided to do it, all I could do was support you. I wouldn't let you give up, because I knew that you definitely wouldn't back out. Since I was certain that you wouldn't back out, why did you say such words to dampen your resolve? You chose to have the duel 7 days before our wedding. If you were to unfortunately die in battle, I wouldn't need to marry a dead person. Yi-ro would still be a free person. Yi-ro's eyes were filled with intense sorrow. She looked at Fong Yan and said, my body is free, but what about my heart? Fong Yan, if you were to die in battle, do you think I would still be able to walk away without any worries? Fong Yan, let me tell you my stance. Human Tao follows the Heavenly Tao, and the Heavenly Tao is the Tao of the heart. I won't stop you from fighting the Divine Dragon with your life. If this can make one's thoughts clear, then I have no choice but to do so. Just like how I couldn't sever my ties when I climbed the Heavenly Tao, I'd rather not step into the Heavenly Tao because my ties are with you. If you are injured in this battle, then we can fight again after you return to recuperate. If you were to die in this battle, I'll wear white and challenge the Divine Dragon to avenge you. If I win, then the Divine Dragon will die. If I lose, then I'll die with you. Although we're not married yet, we're already engaged. From the day you went to the Yi family to send the betrothal gifts, we're a family. Life and death are bound together, a promise made to my son. Holding my son's hand, we'll grow old together. These words are not written to be read, not spoken, but to be fulfilled with the rest of my life. If you're alive, I'll be your wife. If you're dead, I'll still be your wife. If you're alive, we'll work together to revitalize the Fong family. If you're dead, I'll take care of Grandpa and Mother for you. Except for Fong Yen, no other man can enter my eyes. Chapter 833. If you are injured in this battle, then I will wait for you to come back and recuperate before fighting again. If you die in this battle, I will wear a white robe and challenge the dragon god to avenge you. With such a loving and capable wife, what else can I hope for in life? Fong Yen was moved to tears. He opened his arms and wanted to hug the torturous little goblin, Yi Ro, into his arms. Fong Yan's body seemed to have encountered an invisible qi wall. His head was bounced off by the qi wall, but his body couldn't get close to Yi Ro at all. Fong Yan looked at Yi Ro, who was close at hand but difficult to approach, and said with a smile, "Ro, what are you doing? Come, let your husband hug you." "But I am still very angry," Yi Ro said while looking at the wheat sprouts in the wilderness. Those wheat sprouts were shivering in the cold wind, and so was Fong Yan's body. Fong Yan felt the danger and looked at the woman who was about to become his wife with vigilance. He asked in a low voice, "Then I will let you calm down." "Okay." Yi Ro agreed without any hesitation and didn't beat around the bush at all. It was as if he didn't hear Fong Yan's words at all and was just testing the waters. "Ha ha ha, Ro, I am just joking with you." Before Fong Yan finished his sentence, Yi Ro didn't seem to move, but a majestic aura emitted from her body. It was like a sudden explosion of energy bomb, and Fong Yan, who was unprepared, was directly blown away. Clang! The door swayed, and because it couldn't bear the gravity, it looked like it was about to break away from the car. Fong Yan's body tumbled in the air, and then suddenly stopped in the air, violating the principle of free fall. It was as if someone hung a hydrogen balloon on top of his head, or he was stepping on a pair of flaming wheels. His long robe fluttered, and the hem of his robe fluttered in the cold wind. Fong Yan's hair hadn't been trimmed for a while, and now it looked a bit long. They flapped their cheeks haphazardly, covering the left half of the eye. At this moment, Fong Yan really had the cold and arrogant demeanor of a peerless expert. Of course, he was a master of a master. Yi Ro unfastened her seatbelt and jumped out of the open window. Her feet landed lightly on the thick roof of the car. Fong Yan saw Yi Ro chasing after them. Obviously, she didn't want to give up. She said hurriedly, "Ruru, let's go back and fight. It's not good to fight and kill in public, right?" Yi Ro ignored Fong Yan and punched out. An invisible mass of air shrouded Fong Yan. Fong Yan kicked out in the air, and there was a violent collision of air currents in the air. The sizzling sound was incessant, as if something was being burned. However, there were no sparks in the air that could be seen with the naked eye. In the distance, there was the sound of gas bursting. A big pit was blown up in the wheat field, and a large area of green wheat sprouts was covered with black soil. It seemed that they would never show up again. The first punch was just a test. When Fong Yan kicked away the mass of air, Yi Ro stretched out her hand and pulled the Dragon Striker whip from her waist. The whip was like a long snake. It swung in the air one wave after another, and it curled toward Fong Yan's body. Fong Yan knew how terrifying Yi Ro's whip was. His body, which had stopped in the air, rose again. A cold wind blew, and his body moved with the wind. He pounced toward Yi Ro's inner core at a speed that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. Clatter. The sound of firecrackers rang out. It was caused by the long whip tearing the air. Yi-Ro shook her right wrist, and the long whip in her hand spun back. The tip of the long whip seemed to have eyes. It hissed and bit toward Fong Yan's back. Fong Yan felt a chill run down his back. Even if his palm hit Yi-Ro, he would be pierced by her whip. Moreover, he didn't dare to hit Yi-Ro at all. Therefore, he turned 180 degrees in the air and gave up on attacking Yi-Ro with the cloud-expelling palm. Instead, he reached out to grab the tail of the long whip. The tip of the long whip landed in Fong Yan's palm, but he felt a heat flow from his back. His qi and blood were tumbling in his body, and his organs were almost displaced. With a muffled groan, his body was like a rocket that had failed to launch, quickly smashing towards the ground. Plop! Fong Yan's body crashed heavily into the wheat field. With the spot where he fell as the center, the wheat sprouts and soil within a radius of tens of meters were sent flying by the irresolvable force. It was fine if he didn't move, but once he did, it shocked everyone. This was the power of the heavenly Tao realm. After Yi-Ro sent Fong Yan flying with a slap, her body flew horizontally again. Her feet returned to her original position on the roof. It was as if she hadn't moved at all. Don't think that I'll show mercy just because you don't fight back. Yi-Ro said coldly. Half of Fong Yan's body was in the soil. He tried his best to raise his head, wiped the soil off his face, and spat out the mud in his mouth. Looking at the lofty Yi-Ro, he said with a smile, "How can a man hit his wife? Vent your anger. Even if you beat me to death, I won't do anything to you. You beat me in the past too." Yi-Ro said. "Yeah. At that time, you weren't my wife yet," Fong Yan said with a self-righteous expression. "I didn't know whose wife you would become. You bullied me, so I naturally fought back. A man can be beaten to death by his wife, but how can he be beaten to death by someone else's wife?" Yi-Ro sneered and said, "Then I'll let you experience the true power of the heavenly Tao realm." Yi-Ro flicked the whip in her hand, and the soft whip that could be used as a belt turned into an indestructible spear. Due to the immense force injected into the spear trembled violently. It was like a snake that was unwilling to be at the mercy of others. The spearhead buzzed as it darted forward again and again, in a bid to escape the terrifying woman's control. The spear's shaft was enveloped in a layer of white haze. The white haze turned green, red, and deep purple. The spear in Yi-Ro's hand looked like it was about to burn. Yi-Ro held the spear in one hand as she stretched out her other hand's slender middle finger to gently flick the end of the spear. Bang! A soft sound was heard. When the spear left her hand, a shocking scene appeared. It formed a purplish-red trajectory in the air. The trajectory was like a smear of mud in midair. Even after the spear left, it didn't dissipate. Sizzle. The spear became the source of incinerating everything. The surrounding air was swept over by it before being burned. The wheat sprouts on the ground, the black soil that maintained the wheat sprouts, the rocks that were wrapped in the black soil, and the ugly and innocent earthworms were swept over like moths to a flame before vanishing instantly. Not even a puff of white smoke could be seen. Skyfire ablaze. This was the true power of the heavenly Tao realm. It was the ultimate power of the world, or it could be said that they shouldn't even exist in this world. They should be weapons in the hands of sky gods, the will-o'-the-wisps of hell, a taboo for humans. However, a group of humans had broken the barrier and personally obtained this taboo power that came from a foreign land. The spear was silent. It didn't need to make any sound. However, no one could ignore its existence. This was because it was like a comet with a gigantic tail. It was coming at Fong Yan with an unstoppable might that could incinerate everything. It wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Fong Yan sensed danger as his flesh tensed up. Every hair on his body seemed to stand on end. Although the spear had yet to reach him, Fong Yan already felt like he was being burned by an inferno. The heat wave hit him in the face, and the hair on his face and head gave off a burnt smell. This woman. Fong Yan cursed through gritted teeth. This woman must be crazy. How could she use such a killer move? Is she planning to murder her husband? Fong Yan was very worried that he wouldn't die at the hands of the divine dragon, but at the hands of his future wife, Yi Wen-ro. The Taiji heart that had been silent for a long time began to spin once again. The black and white Taiji fishes spun crazily before turning into a transparent crystal. On the surface, the crystal didn't seem to move at all, as though it had solidified. But in fact, its motion had been upgraded, turning into the motion of dark matter. Dark matter was a type of matter that was smaller than electrons and photons. It didn't carry any electric charge and wouldn't interfere with electrons. It could pass through electromagnetic waves and gravitational fields. It was an important part of the universe. The density of dark matter was very low, but the quantity was huge. Therefore, its total mass was very large. It represented 84.5% of the matter in the universe, of which, the matter visible to humans only accounted for less than 10% of the total mass. In scientific terms, this was dark matter freely moving within. But in the eyes of martial arts practitioners, this was a sign that the body's potential had been developed to the limit. The cyclone had become a body of energy. It had become a tangible energy gate that could continuously extract energy. Fong Yan's knees were slightly bent, his hands were spread out, and his feet were drawing circles on the ground. He displayed the invincible drunken crane riding the wind to the extreme. His body had already turned into an illusory shadow. The shadow became fainter and fainter until it was almost transparent. The long purplish-red trail of the spear pierced through the shadow, leaving a colorful trail in the middle of the shadow. From afar, the trajectory of the spear through the air and through the transparent shadow looked like a beautiful picture of a spear piercing through a heart. Chapter 834. Although Wan Jing and Yi were a step behind, they quickly caught up. Wan Jing drove while Ye's eyes kept searching. Ahead. Their car is in the wheat field. Yi shouted as she pointed at the car in the wheat field. They're fighting. They're fighting. Yi shouted even louder as she pointed at Fong Yan and Yi Ro who were flying in the air. Wan Jing had already seen Fong Yan and Yi Ro. As he drove the car over, he answered Yi, I saw it. They're really fighting. Let's stand further away. Wan Jing stopped the car far away and looked at the purplish-red rainbow that appeared in the sky. He said with his mouth agape, it's over. Your sister has used a killer move. Is this move very powerful? Yi didn't know much about martial arts, but she could still sense the murderous aura from afar. She felt her body tense up and her heart beating violently. She would have such a feeling when watching horror movies, but it was obvious that this wasn't a horror movie. The scene of Fong Yan and Yi Ro fighting in the wheat field was still very beautiful. Impressive. Wan Jing nodded solemnly. There's a rainbow. What's its name? I don't know. Wan Jing knew that he had been despised by Yi. He explained with a flushed face, although I don't know its name, I know that this move must be very powerful. Think about it. How can a Heavenly Dao Realm expert's killer move not be powerful? Yi nodded and asked worriedly, don't tell me my sister really killed Fong Yan. How is that possible? Wan Jing grinned and said, Fong Yan is your sister's man. How can she kill him? She wouldn't be happy even if others wanted to kill her. You sure aren't worried at all, Yi said with a roll of her eyes. Then why did she use a killer move on Fong Yan? It's to feed him a move, Ruan Jing said. What do you mean feed him a move? It's sparring practice. It's to let Fang Yan familiarize himself with the might of the heavenly Dao realm and the various possible attacks, Ruan Jing said with a smile. He really wasn't worried at all. This group of brothers had watched Fang Yan and Yi Rou grow up, and it was also this group of brothers who had watched them get together. After loving and killing each other for so many years, their feelings were much more intense than ordinary people's. Yi Rou was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She was dedicated to Fang Yan. How could she kill Fang Yan at this moment? I see. Yezi nodded and said, do you mean that my sister won't kill Fang Yan no matter what? Of course, Ruan Jing said. Unless there's only one possibility. What possibility? Yezi was a little nervous again. Ruan Jing looked at Yi doubtfully and said, if Fang Yan doesn't resist, or if he can't resist, then the killing move might really kill him. Ouch! Leaf exclaimed. Ruan Jing, hurry up and stop them. Don't let them fight anymore. Ruan Jing wore a bitter look and said, you want me to mediate a fight between two heavenly Dao realm experts? Indeed, a woman's heart is the most vicious. Who are you calling a woman? You are the woman. You don't even dare to mediate a fight. Just as Ruan Jing and Yezi had seen, the spear that was manifested from the whip flew across the sky, pulling out a purplish-red rainbow in the air. The rainbow was like colored powder smeared on glass. It looked like it wouldn't disappear anytime soon. There was a strong charred smell in the air. It was the smell of air, wheat sprouts, black soil, and rocks being incinerated. Although it was difficult to even see their corpses being incinerated. The flaming spear pierced through the translucent body, as though it had pierced through Fang Yan's heart. Then, the spear kept moving forward, and the huge thrust supported it to fly to a place far, far away. Fang Yan's body vanished from the spot, as though he had been incinerated by the flaming spear. However, there wasn't any horror in Yi Rou's eyes. Her body remained standing on the roof of the carriage. The cold winds howled and her long hair fluttered. She looked like a witch that could destroy the world at any moment. Strange ripples appeared in the place where Fang Yan had just disappeared. Then, a huge cyclone appeared in the air. The cyclone became slower and slower, turning into a transparent figure. As the speed of the cyclone slowed down, the figure became clearer and clearer. Fang Yan appeared again. It was very magical, and it looked very strange. Fang Yan seemed to have gone to another time and space to hide for a while. After the danger passed, he came back. Fang Yan's body floated in the air. His feet didn't touch the dust on the ground. He was handsome, confident and elegant. There was a faint smile on his face. It was as if he had just returned from a perfect vacation. Fang Yan looked at Yi Rou on the roof and said, "This is the power of the Great Desolation and the most primitive power in the world. It's invincible and invincible. It can devour and incinerate everything it encounters. I thought it was just a legend. I didn't expect it to be real. The water overflow state is also very good." Yi Rou raised her chin slightly, looking very proud. "At least you're good at running away." Fang Yan laughed out loud and said, "I've been made fun of by my wife. Then I'll show you what the real water overflow state is." When Fang Yan spoke, he had become transparent in an instant. Yi Rou quickly turned around and slapped out. Their palms collided in midair, producing a dull sound. It turned out that when Fang Yan spoke, he had already changed his position. Before he finished his words, he had already launched an attack on Yi Rou from behind. Crack! Crack! The two of them were fighting more fiercely. "It's so exciting," Yi Rou said excitedly. Ruanjing nodded and said, yes. Half an hour later. They're all so powerful. Ruanjing nodded and said, yes. 1 hour later. Have they finished fighting? Ruanjing shook his head and said, no. 2 hours later. Haven't they finished fighting yet? Ruanjing shook his head and said, no. Go back to sleep. I'll call you when they're done. 3 hours later. Yi Ro opened her sleepy eyes and asked, what's wrong? They're done, Ruanjing said. Oh. Yi Ro leaned back on the chair and fell asleep again. We're going back, Ruanjing said. Yi Ro looked outside and was shocked. She said, wow, they're so powerful. They destroyed a wheat field in the field. Ruanjing opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. Yi Ro was still driving. Fong Yan's body slumped in the passenger seat. I can't bear to hit you, Fong Yan said in a weak voice. Yi Ro ignored him and drove with a serious face. I mean it. I can't bear to hit you, Fong Yan emphasized again. By the time the group returned to Swallow Dock, lunchtime had long passed, and it would be time for dinner in a while. When Fong Yan returned home, Yi Ro followed him to the Fong family's house. Ruanjing and Yi Ro didn't hesitate and followed them. Lu Wan looked at Yi Ro as if she was her future daughter-in-law. She took Yi Ro's hand and asked her why she came back so late and if she had had lunch. Yi Ro said no, so Lu Wan went to the kitchen and asked the servants to cook. Fong Yan touched the bleeding wound on the corner of his mouth and wanted to cry. He was injured so badly. Didn't his mother see it? Was she really his real mother? The future mistress wanted to eat, so the chef's speed was first class. She made some home-cooked dishes and a pot of rice. The four of them were so hungry that they gobbled up the food. Ruanjing had just finished his third bowl of rice when the pheasant and mushroom soup was served. Only after everyone drank another bowl of soup could they be considered truly satisfied. Ruanjing took a tissue and wiped his mouth. He looked at Fong Yan and said, I have to go back to deal with something. He looked at Yi Ro and asked, do you want to go with me? Yi Ro glanced at Yi Ro and said, sister, I'll go back to talk with the old ancestor. After that, they bade farewell to Lu Wan and left. Fong Yan looked at Yi Ro and Yi Ro also looked at Fong Yan. Lu Wan looked at Fong Yan and Yi Ro and seemed to suddenly think of something. She said, I also have an appointment with your aunt to discuss the wedding. You two have a rest. I'll go to talk with my aunt. After that, she left with a little girl. Now, there were only Fong Yan and Yi Ro in the living room. Fong Yan looked at Yi Ro and said, don't you have a rest? Yi Ro stood up and said, come here. Okay. Fong Yan nodded and stood up. Yi Ro pushed open the door of Fong Yan's room. After Fong Yan passed by her, she closed the door and locked it. Yi Ro stood at the door and said to Fong Yan, go take a bath. Okay. Fong Yan nodded again. He didn't dare to resist because he was afraid that Yi Ro would beat him again. When he walked to the door of the bathroom, he suddenly came to his senses. He stared at Yi Ro and said hesitantly, Ro, it's not good. It's still early and my mom may come back at any time. How about we wait a little longer? Yi Ro looked at him expressionlessly and said, I said take a bath. Okay, okay. If you are in a hurry, we can close the curtains. Fong Yan trotted into the bathroom. Idiot. A charming smile appeared on Yi Ro's face. Chapter 835. Indulge in the night, tell me it's hard to find you, turning back is a dream, still passive, escape, stare at you, but deeply annoyed. Ah! Fang Yen coughed violently, and water poured into his mouth. Fang Yen took a quick shower with a little joy in his heart. He used a towel to wipe his hair and the water stains on his body. Then, he walked out of the bathroom in clean pajamas. Yi Rose sat on the bed, looking at him with a strange look, with a rare shyness on her face. "Get on the bed," Yi Rose said. "Okay." Fang Yen answered, moving to the bed with small steps, climbed on the bed with his butt up, and then closed his eyes, lying on the bed with his body spread out. Lying on the bed, some lewd pictures came to his mind, and a dot appeared under the word big, which became 2. Fang Yen felt a little embarrassed, thinking, how can I do this? But then he thought, this is what a real man should do. If not, Yi Rose must think there's something wrong with me. "Turn over and lie on your stomach," Yi Rose said. "Okay." Fang Yen was about to change his position. When he was about to turn over, he suddenly felt this behavior was a little inappropriate. He could love endlessly, but he couldn't accept such humiliation. Fang Yen lay back down. He looked at Yi Rose timidly and said, "Why don't we just lie down? You can lie on top. You must lie on your stomach." Yi Rose's attitude was very tough. "I'm not used to that, you'll get used to it." Fang Yen was angry and shouted, "Yi Rose, I'm telling you, although I don't want to hit you, it doesn't mean I can't beat you. I'm a man, and I've given up my pride and self-esteem to let you lie on top, but you're still not satisfied. You want me to lie on my stomach. Why do you want me to lie on my stomach? What can you do?" "Apply medicine." Yi Rose looked at Fang Yen as if looking at a lunatic, and said these 2 words softly. Fang Yan's body instantly stiffened, and he immediately closed his eyes. However, when she thought of how Yi Wenru was still staring at her from the side of the bed, she closed her eyes. Wasn't it the legendary act of burying one's head in the sand? Thus, Fang Yen opened his eyes again. Fang Yen bravely looked into Yi Wen's eyes and said, "I know you're applying medicine. But can't I apply it while I'm lying down?" "The palm I used to hit you was on your back," Yi Rose said expressionlessly. Fang Yen felt that he was really stupid. How could he think of anything else? Yi Rose was his fiancée, a woman who would soon become his wife. No matter how impatient she was, it was impossible for her to get on him at this moment. Of course, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. So, Fang Yen turned over and exposed his back to Yi Rose. Yi Rose smeared the brown ointment on her palm, and then gently rubbed it on the spot where the blood clotted on Fang Yen's back. After applying the ointment evenly, she began to massage the clotted blood with her palm. There was a cyan light flashing in the middle of her palm, and a scorching warm current flowed on Fang Yan's back. Fang Yan felt a burning pain on his skin. He knew that Yi Rose was using her internal force to help him improve blood circulation and remove blood clots to repair the damage to his internal tissues. This woman didn't hold back when she hit him, and she didn't hold back when she treated him. "If you use a little more force, I won't have to fight against the dragon god this time," Fang Yen said with a smile. "If I use a little more force, you won't have the chance to fight against the dragon god anymore," Yi Rose said. Fang Yen covered his head in the pillow, smiled shyly, and said, "I know you don't want to do it." Crack! Yi Rose suddenly slapped him, and a dislocated bone on Fang Yan's back was reset. "Ouch!" Fang Yen cried out in pain. "Anything can happen," Yi Zichin said. Yi Rose's palm continued to massage the injured spot on Fang Yan's back, and there was a gentle smile on her lips that Fang Yen couldn't see. "This time, I believe you." Fang Yen lay there and didn't dare to move. "I didn't do my best," Yi Rose said softly. "I know." Fang Yen said with certainty, "Although you've tried very hard, you don't have killing intent or fighting spirit in your heart. So it's hard for you to use your full strength. I have killing intent, but I also have fighting spirit." So, he's a very scary opponent, Fong Yen said in a low voice. Fong Yen, Yi Ro said softly. If you really want to, what am I thinking? I'm not thinking anything, Fong Yen quickly denied. This was too scary. Could it be that this woman had guessed his thoughts? Crack, another spine on Fong Yan's back was restored by Yi Ro. Foam Mountain, also known as Wind Mountain, was located in the Red Canyon far away from Yanjing. Apart from the maple trees all over the mountain, there was also the sandstorm from the north. Foam Mountain was the first stronghold to stop the sandstorm from invading Yanjing City. No one lived here, and there were only a few tourists. Occasionally, a few backpackers came to enjoy the scenery of the Red Canyon. When they set up camp and prepared to cook, they found that a thick layer of sand quickly fell into the pot as soon as they put it on the fire. Unable to hold on, they packed their bags and fled in panic. Foam Mountain was more lively today because someone was going to fight here. Ever since Fong Yen went to challenge the Dragon God, the news that both sides had agreed to fight in 7 days at Foam Mountain had spread. Many people had come here in advance to survey the terrain and find out the truth. Some people started setting up early. They drove their cars, prepared their tents, and settled down in a place with a beautiful view. Some people tried their best to climb, guessing which slope or which peak Fong Yen and the Dragon God would fight on. After all, Foam Mountain was so big and stretched for hundreds of kilometers. If they were too far away, they would miss the exciting duel. Most people gathered at the foot of the mountain and waited until they confirmed the location of the duel between Fong Yen and the Dragon God before approaching. Most of the people who knew about the duel were influential figures in Yanjing City. Their circle was small, but there were many people. Everyone knew each other, so it was common to see such a scene. Hey, third brother, you're here too. What's up? Who do you bet on? I bet on the Dragon God. Young Master Zhang, come here. Try this red wine I brought. I know you like it. I'm sure you'll be satisfied. 3 twos. I bet 3 twos. Why are you betting on a pair of kings? Are you stupid? Have you figured out who's the landlord here? Feilai Peak. This was the loneliest and steepest peak in Foam Mountain. It was high and dangerous, and there was almost no road. It was said that several groups of mountaineering enthusiasts wanted to conquer Feilai Peak, but they were all conquered by it. After a life was lost, those people finally gave up on this place with all kinds of legends. Of course, such road conditions couldn't stop Fong Yen and the Dragon God's hard life. The person accompanying Fong Yen was Yi Ro. Originally, he wanted to come alone, but after Yi Ro glanced at him, he immediately understood what she meant. Maybe it was because the wedding day was approaching, but they were getting along better and better. Fong Yen felt that he understood Yi Ro better and better. In the past, he only knew that Yi Ro would beat him up when she was unhappy. Now he knew that Yi Ro might beat him up whether she was happy or not, so, Fong Yen took the initiative to invite Yi Ro. Yi Ro nodded and agreed readily. The Dragon God's hard life was accompanied by his disciple, Gong Sun Chi. On one side was his master, and on the other side was his savior. Gong Sun Chi was most unwilling to see this duel. Even though they had already arrived at the venue, the way he looked at Fong Yen still made Fong Yen feel a strong, pleading. His eyes could speak, and he was telling Fong Yen, stop fighting, go back. Go back to your own home, find some vegetables, and fight as you want, abuse as you want. Fong Yen felt that Gong Sun Chi was really his good brother. Fong Yen was dressed in white, which was his special request. Because he liked Shimin Chui Xue in Gulong's wuxia novels. No matter which door he was in, since it was snowing, it was more appropriate to wear white. In Fong Yan's mind, Shimin Chui Xue must wear white. If he wore black, yellow, red, or purple, it would not be worthy of such a cool name. The dragon god's hard life was still dressed in a gray robe. When Fong Yen first saw him, he was wearing the same clothes, and now he was still wearing the same clothes, as if he had never bought a new set of clothes. His body was skinny, and his hands were folded in his sleeves. Standing on the top of the mountain, he looked like he would be blown away by a gust of wind. Gong Sun Chi walked in front of Fong Yen, looked at Fong Yen and said, "You've decided, you won't change your mind?" Fong Yen patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "I can understand how you feel, but you should also know that when we last met, I had already made up my mind." The dragon god saw this scene and sighed, "My disciple, dragon god's hard life, is still not as good as green dragon Mo Qiandi's disciple. This duel is inevitable, why say so much?" Fong Yen glanced at the dragon god's hard life and said, "Gong Sun Chi is just more sentimental than I am. He is willing to care about the fate of others, but I care more about my own fate. You sure know how to defend him," the dragon god said with a smile. His gaze fell on Yi Ro, who was beside Fong Yen, and said, "I heard that Fong Yen is going to marry Miss Yi, one family with two heavenly laws. This is something that has never been heard of for hundreds of years. It will definitely be a great story in the future." Yi Ro looked at the dragon god's hard eyes and said in a cold voice, "If you kill him, I will definitely kill you." Chapter 836. If you kill him, I will definitely kill you. Yi Ro's words were sonorous and powerful. It did not make sense to make such a threat before the duel. However, according to Yi Ro's usual character and style of doing things, it was not strange at all. Besides, the last time the divine dragon battled with the azure dragon Mo Qingdi, it was a friendly duel, but the divine dragon broke the tendons of the azure dragon Mo Qingdi's hand, making him wish he was dead. Who asked this old fellow to have such a record? The mountain winds howled and sand filled the sky. Hearing Yi Ro's words, the divine dragon's expression did not change, nor did he show any anger. He looked at Fong Yen with a smile and said, "You have a good wife, it is a great blessing in life." Fong Yen nodded and said, "You don't have to be envious, it's useless to be envious anyway. At your age, it's probably not easy for you to find a wife, right?" "Ha ha ha," the divine dragon laughed out loud and said, "That makes sense. It really makes sense. At my age, it's probably not easy for me to find a wife, let alone a good wife in the heavenly Tao realm." The husband and wife ganged up to bully his master, an old man who had never even married a wife in his life. This was unacceptable to Gong Sun Chi. He could not be angry at his savior, Fong Yen, so he targeted Fong Yan's wife, Yi Ro. "See, straight men are so cute. What a joke. If Fong Yen is killed by my master, will you be able to avenge Fong Yen? Why do you think you are better than Fong Yen?" Gong Sun Chi sneered. When he spoke, the direction of his nostrils indicated the target of his attack. Yi Ro glanced at Gong Sun Chi and said, "What right do you have to speak? What do you mean? If you were slightly more powerful, would you still need your master to fight Fong Yen personally? Yi Ro, do you dare to accept my challenge?" Gong Sun Chi gnashed his teeth, wishing he could cut Yi Ro into two pieces right there and then. He really felt pity for Fong Yen. Such a good man, handsome, charming, humorous, skilled in martial arts, and loyal, how could he fall into the hands of such a woman? How could he be happy in this life? "I dare not," Yi Ro refused on the spot. "I don't compete with people of lower realms." Gong Sun Chi drew his sword on the spot, ready to fight to the death with Yi Ro. Gong Sun Chi. The dragon god tried his best to stop him. "Stop messing around. Master, she's going too far." Gong Sun Chi roared with a red face and neck. "What's wrong with being ridiculed because your cultivation isn't good enough? Only by knowing shame and courage can one become a master of a generation. The dragon god worked hard and did not hesitate to stab his disciple in the chest. Gong Sun Chi really wanted to go down the mountain. There was no way to continue watching this fight. The dragon god looked at Gong Sun Chi and said, "When you reach the top, all the mountains are small. The most important thing is the process of climbing. When you reach the top, there is no one around you, no one to talk to. How lonely and helpless will that be? When you can't see the stars and the moon in front of you, how will you have the direction to chase? How will you have the motivation to chase? It's a happy thing to have an opponent to defeat and surpass. How boring is it to have never been defeated in life?" Gong Sun Chi's face turned serious. He bowed respectfully to his master and said, "Master, your disciple understands. Your disciple will definitely focus on cultivation and climb to the heavenly realm in the future." The dragon god nodded to his disciple and said, "You have the talent, it's only a matter of time for you to climb to the heavenly realm, but you lack training and the hardships of putting yourself at death's door. This will hinder your climbing to the heavenly realm." The dragon god pointed at Fang Yen and said, "As the saying goes, the children of the poor become responsible early." Although Fang Yen has experienced many setbacks and challenges, it has honed his temperament and aura. That's why he entered the realm at such a young age. "You are my disciple, this helped you in the early stages, allowing you to improve quickly and have a solid foundation. But it also hurt you in the later stages, you can only progress slowly, and you lack the surprise of reaching the heavens in one step." Fang Yen was a little unhappy. He thought, "This old man doesn't even know how to praise someone. Who are you calling a child of the poor? My family was rich back then, okay? Now my family is even richer, okay?" Gong Sun Chi was deeply inspired. He looked at the dragon god with sincerity and said, "A teacher for a day, a teacher for life. To be able to become master's disciple is the greatest fortune of my life. No matter what, I will continue to work hard. Even if it's a little slow, it doesn't matter. I think one day, I will climb to the heavenly realm. Your disciple will definitely not embarrass master." The dragon god grinned and said, "With these words of yours, our relationship as master and disciple has not been in vain." The dragon god seemed to be bidding farewell to his disciple. After he was done, he looked at Fang Yen and said, "I haven't moved in a long time, and I don't usually have the thought of exercising with great fanfare. So, in this battle, I hope you can let me have a taste of failure. Fists and legs have no eyes, killing or mutilating depends on your means." The dragon god's voice was very calm, and when he spoke, there was a faint smile on his face. However, it gave off a tough feeling that was hard to ignore. The dragon god, usually looked low-key and amiable, like an approachable little old man. Only at this moment did he reveal the aura of a heavenly Tao realm and his fangs. Killing or mutilating depends on your means. This sentence was very straightforward, and it was also very magnanimous. It was 1,000 times more magnanimous than Yi Rose. "If you kill him, I will definitely kill you." The dragon god was a domineering person who saw through life and death and was willing to give up everything, while Yi Rose was a domineering person who cherished him excessively and wanted to make him stay. Both were very precious. Fang Yan nodded and said, "To be honest, I don't blame you for breaking the old drunkard's tendons, because if I had one today, I would have done the same to you." The dragon god laughed again, looked at Fang Yan and said, "You're really an interesting guy. I'm full of expectations for you. The wind is cold in the high mountains. Are we going to start? If this goes on, this old man's body won't be able to take it anymore." Fang Yan turned to look at Yi Rose, looked straight into her beautiful eyes, and said, "I'll be right back." "Okay." Yi Rose nodded. "If I don't come back, I will avenge you, and then raise your parents. There's something else I need your help with, but I don't know how to ask. Speak. Our Fang family has only one child for generations. If I don't come back today, when you have children in the future, can you choose one of them to be surnamed Fong? The muscles on Yi Ro's face twitched, and she asked coldly, do you think the child's father will agree? Fong Yan's expression changed drastically, and he said, are you really going to have children with him? Why not? Yi Ro looked straight into Fong Yan's anxious eyes, and said, if that man is Fong Yan. Fong Yan stretched out his arm, and Yi Ro lay in his arms like a little bird. There was no shyness, nor was there any violence. It was so natural, filled with reluctance. Gong Sun Chi glanced at his master, and then quickly looked away. He thought, Master doesn't need to do this, right? Yi Ro and Gong Sun Chi began to retreat, and they only stopped when they reached the edge of Flying Peak. Even this place wasn't considered safe for two Heavenly Dao realm experts to fight. However, they were powerful themselves. As long as they didn't directly participate in the battle, just some forces and rocks wouldn't be able to harm them. Fong Yan and the Divine Dragon stood facing each other. One side's clothes were whiter than snow, and they were moist like water. However, the water wasn't a stream, but a vast ocean that surged without end. The other side wore a heavy gray robe, and he had a steady and unshakable aura. Both of them had their auras converged, and not a single bit of their forces leaked out. Even so, they still gave off an unreachable sense of distance. Fong Yan was smiling, and so was Tia Fong. Both of them were smiling naturally and casually, without any signs of danger. Fong Yan placed one hand behind him, and the other made an inviting gesture, and said, Mr. Divine Dragon, please go ahead. Young man, don't stand on ceremony. The Divine Dragon said with a smile. As he spoke, he tapped the ground with his toes, and a rock shattered into countless pieces. The countless rocks turned into countless weapons, and as if they had eyes, they stabbed at Fong Yan in front of him. This shameless old man, Fong Yan cursed in his heart. Although he said that the young man shouldn't stand on ceremony, his hands were already attacking the young man without restraint. Fong Yan waved his hands and waved them in the air. Then, a huge balloon was pushed forward. Crack, crack, the gravel hit the huge invisible balloon and bounced back, shooting at the Divine Dragon. At the same time, the balloon drifted towards the Divine Dragon desperately, as if it was going to envelop the entire Divine Dragon inside. With a smile on his face, the Divine Dragon stretched out a finger and poked at the balloon. Master, Gong Sun Chi's heart almost jumped out of his throat. He was not sure about the strength of the water overflow state, but he knew that there was something else to this balloon. As long as his master's body touched this balloon, it would explode and tear him into pieces. Poof! The Divine Dragon tried his best to tap the balloon with his finger. Just like a soap bubble blown by a child, it disappeared in the air without a trace. There was no explosion, and no one was torn apart. This made Gong Sun Chi confused, but he could not ask anyone else. After all, she was the only one present who could answer his questions. He did not want to ask her. This exchange was completed in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. Both of them only lifted their toes and waved their arms. During the battle, both of them stood in the same place, and did not move at all. Everything returned to normal. The Divine Dragon looked at Fong Yan, and said with a smile, "This is considered a warm-up, right?" Fong Yan nodded, and said, "Warm-up complete." Chapter 837. The foot of Feng Mountain was bustling with noise. Master Zhang, did they start fighting? Did they start fighting or not? Who knows? There wasn't even a bird, let alone a human. I say, someone like the dragon god wouldn't go up the mountain through this path, right? They stood on the peak after a few leaps and bounds. Do you think this is a fantasy film? No matter how powerful they are, they're still human, and they have to walk properly. I heard they went to the Ghost Sorrow Peak, and some people are climbing there. Should we go and take a look? The dragon god is too much. Why didn't he do a live broadcast of such a big battle? If we stay here, they won't even know when the battle is over. Why don't we set up a big screen here in the Grand Canyon for a live broadcast? We can buy tickets to enter, drink beer, eat barbecue, and have a few pretty girls. He's not economical at all. Do you think this is a challenge tournament? What kind of master is Mr. Dragon God? I heard he's like a god who can kill a big tiger with one punch. Beijing. A villa in the suburbs. Chinitian held a cup of tea and stood on the edge of the corridor, looking at the undulating peaks in the distance. Those peaks belonged to the sphere of influence of Fragrant Mountain and were far away from Foam Mountain. However, she was watching with deep focus, as if the battle of the century that she had been longing for was taking place there. She wasn't like the other rich young masters, who drove luxury cars with famous wine and beautiful supermodels to protect them. She knew the meaning of this battle, and she also knew what defeat meant. However, this battle was beyond her ability. Moreover, with that woman by Fong Yan's side, even with Chinitian's arrogance, he had to admit that she was more suitable than him. My battlefield is not there. Chinitian retracted her gaze and said to herself. This is an unfair world. Some people are born high above and have everything. Some people struggle their whole lives but end up poor and destitute. Some people enjoy the blessings of multiple lovers, and some people give their hearts but don't get any warm response. I know you're not satisfied. You think you work harder than them, you think you're smarter than them, and you put in more effort than them. But he didn't receive any special treatment from others. It was as if everyone in the world had their eyes on that person. It's like a clown in a circus. You try your best to perform the funniest performance in the most difficult action, but all the audience is attracted to a guy who is acting as a puppet. They gave him flowers, applause, and riches. You, on the other hand, are unknown, doing what you have done countless times. Yes, it's unfair. I feel that the world is too cruel to you. But, unfair things happen every day, and poor people appear every day. Why should I give you such a chance? In the Phoenix Orchid Grove in the courtyard stood a man completely shrouded in a black robe. He stood there motionlessly, as if he had become one with the phoenix tree. However, his eyes were bright. This was the only proof that he was still alive. Because I think you're more valuable than them, Chinitian said coldly. High and mighty, without any feelings. So, prove to me the value of your existence. The man bowed slightly and disappeared from the courtyard. Muing walked over and stood behind Chinitian. He followed her line of sight and looked at the mountain peak in the distance. He asked, is he trustworthy? Of course not, Chinitian answered without hesitation. Would you trust a blade? Young lady, what do you mean? I'm only giving him a chance to prove himself. I don't trust him at all. Trust is a very precious word. I have to give it to the people I care about the most. I understand, Muing nodded. Has the battle begun? Chinitian asked. Our people have arrived at Foam Mountain, but they haven't found the exact location of the battle between Fong Yan and the Dragon God. This is also their intention. They don't want anyone to disturb them except for the two sides. But, as soon as they have a result, they will send it back immediately. Chinitian didn't deny it. She handed the teacup to Muing and said, I'm going to take a bath. Muing took the teacup and continued to guard the place. He knew that countless people were waiting for the final result. Watching. Lu Xiaoge finished his work and walked to the courtyard for a few steps to get some fresh air. That's good. At least I can take a breather now. The Lan clan of Lan Mountain Valley, the Lu clan of Willow Tree, and their Chaoyan technology were all in great danger when the Jiang clan suddenly launched an attack on them. Any carelessness and they could be destroyed or devoured by them. Coupled with Li Ya's kidnapping and Du Qing's imprisonment, the ironclad alliance they had painstakingly built in Huaqing was almost dismembered. Without Huaqing to support Fang Yan, how could they fight against the Jiang clan in the future? Fortunately, at the most critical moment, the Qin clan jumped out and helped them offset the majority of the Jiang clan's attack and attracted the Jiang clan's main firepower. But the situation still wasn't optimistic. The Jiang clan was still the Jiang clan, and the Qin clan didn't intend to start a full-scale war with them. It was already difficult for them to protect themselves. To defeat the Jiang clan, they didn't even know how to start. But, if Fang Yan won, it would be tough for him. Lu Chaoge didn't know martial arts, but she was a smart woman. She knew how to judge the situation. She was very clear that the success or failure of this battle would determine the success or failure of Chaoyan technology, and the existence of the ironclad alliance of Huaqing. If Fang Yan was defeated or killed in battle, would the Qin clan still be willing to support them like this? Would Lan Mountain Valley and Lu Shu, who were fighting together with them, still advance and retreat with them? If Fang Yan was no longer around, how much loyalty would they have left to this side? The worst-case scenario was that, when they realized that the situation wasn't right and smelled blood, they might turn red and counterattack, becoming their biggest enemy. As an outstanding manager, as Fang Yan's representative in Huaqing, he had to have this sense of crisis. He could only keep this thought in his heart, in the deepest part of his heart. He couldn't even let his current battle partners know about it. He had to be fully prepared. Lu Chaoge was very tired. But, at this moment, she suddenly relaxed. She felt that it was a little strange. Fang Yan was fighting a decisive battle in Feng Mountain, and his life was hanging by a thread. Shouldn't she be more worried? Shouldn't she be under more pressure? Soon, she figured out the reason. She gave up, or rather, temporarily gave up. Because the decisive factors were all gathered on Fang Yan. Fang Yan bore all the pressure for them. If Fang Yan won, then they would naturally sound the horn to counterattack and fight to the death with the Jiang clan. But, if Fang Yan lost, or Fang Yan died, their efforts in Huaqing wouldn't have much meaning. With just them, they couldn't stop the attack of the Jiang clan or other forces. This had nothing to do with how hard they worked. Only now did Lu Chaoge truly realize the importance of Fang Yan's existence to them. That young man, that delicate man with thin shoulders, the man who idled around all day and was complained that he didn't do proper work, was actually supporting and protecting them in his own way. Fang Yan, Lu Chaoge looked at the gray sky. Today's weather wasn't very good. There was no moon or stars in the sky. However, the night breeze was cool, so it didn't make people feel depressed. Lu Chaoge held her stomach and said softly, "You must live." Swallow Doc. The teacher was used to sleeping early. If there was nothing else, he would eat dinner at around 8:00 every night, boil a bucket of hot water, soak his feet, and then lie in bed to sleep. Of course, he was also the earliest to get up in the village. When the people of Swallow Dock were still in their sweet dreams, he had already gotten up with a manure basket on his back to pick up feces. There were many domestic animals in Swallow Dock. The animals wandered around and defecated everywhere. However, the people who came to Swallow Dock would feel that it was especially clean. It was rare to see any animal feces, because they were all picked up by the elders of Swallow Dock, led by the teacher. The night was gloomy, and the weather was cold. The teacher who lived at the entrance of the village was the first to bear the brunt of the cold. The north wind blew, almost sweeping up the straw mat in his thatched cottage. The teacher stood in the middle of the courtyard, wearing a fox skin. He looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "It's probably going to snow heavily before the Lava festival." He held an enamel jar in his hand, which contained a large amount of tea leaves. After taking a big gulp of the tea leaves, the teacher looked at the green mountains in the distance and sighed, "This child is still too impatient, but isn't the water overflow realm in line with the heavens? If I had severed my mortal thoughts back then, where would I be now?" Since Feng Yan has the confidence to challenge the dragon god, it means that he is fully prepared. He will soar to the heavens tonight. Feng Clan. Feng Clan's ancestral hall. Feng Hui, the old master of the Feng clan, didn't have dinner that night. In the evening, he asked his eldest son-in-law to push him in, then chased his son-in-law away and closed the door of the ancestral hall. Before this, he had already abstained from meat and wine. He knelt in front of the plaque of the Feng clan's ancestors and prayed devoutly. He didn't believe in ghosts and gods, but he still hoped that they could protect his grandson. Feng Yan will win. Chapter 838. This was a world where looks mattered. Jia Zhaoqiang was short and fat, and he stuttered a little. According to the natural elimination law of society, it was not easy for a man like him to find a partner. However, if he was the second young master of the Jia family in Yanjing, it would be a different story. Jia Zhaoqiang knew where his disadvantage was. Compared with other handsome playboys, he felt that he was too simple and honest. Therefore, in order to make up for his shortcomings, Jia Zhaoqiang especially liked to spend money. Anyway, he had secretly calculated that according to his current daily consumption level, the existing assets of the Jia family were enough for him to squander for 365 years. Even if he gave 265 years to his elder brother, he still had 100 years to enjoy. Jia Zhaoqiang was very worried that he would not live to 100 years old. Therefore, Jia Zhaoqiang put in a lot of effort when he spent money. For example, this time, in order to enjoy the much-anticipated Battle of Feng Mountain, Jia Zhaoqiang brought a team of Hummers. There were 2 bodyguards from the famous security company Golden Shield Security. In fact, he did not need bodyguards at all. However, rich playboys and young ladies all brought bodyguards. If he did not bring 2 bodyguards, wouldn't he be looked down upon? There was a chef and a personal assistant, red wine produced by a centuries-old Bordeaux wine cellar, a charcoal oven, and a rising B-list star, Li Qing, whom he had arranged a time earlier. Naturally, Jia Zhaoqiang gathered with other playboys. They drank and bragged, and then took beautiful girls to the tent for wild sex. After Jia Zhaoqiang drank 2 bottles of wine and ate a few pieces of fat but not greasy lamb legs, he became interested in that aspect. He dragged the star named Li Qing into the tent. Li Qing followed Jia Zhaoqiang with infinite shyness in the midst of the playful teasing of those playboys. Whoosh! A white shadow flashed in front of Jia Zhaoqiang's eyes, rolling up a cold wind and attacking Jia Zhaoqiang's body. Jia Zhaoqiang stood there for a long time and asked, "Did you see anything?" Li Qing was busy acting shy. How could she notice anything else? So, she shook her head and said, "What? I didn't see anything." Jia Zhaoqiang rubbed his eyes and said, "It seems that there is nothing, let's go in. You only know how to scare people." Li Qing pinched Jia Zhaoqiang's fat arm. It was more like she was scratching and flirting with him. "I really saw a shadow," Jia Zhaoqiang said seriously. Seeing Li Qing's tender and alluring little face, Jia Zhaoqiang felt that there was really no need for him to waste time on some insignificant matters. So, Jia Zhaoqiang held Li Qing's little hand and said, "Maybe I'm seeing things. Come quickly, I'm in a good mood, I'll let you enjoy yourself today." Pa! A black object flew towards Jia Zhaoqiang's face. "Young Master Chang, should we search the area?" The other bodyguard asked. Brother Chang, let's go in. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Li Qing saw Jia Zhaoqiang's pale face and eyes filled with fear. Jia Zhaoqiang grabbed Li Qing's hand and said, Go back, let's go back now. Brother Chang, are we not going to watch the final battle? Not anymore. Let's go, let's go. Drive. Go and drive. Ada and Ah Quan are in our car. Be careful. Yes. The two bodyguards didn't know what was going on, but they agreed readily. To be able to squeeze in the same car with the beauty Li Qing was something they couldn't ask for. Although Li Qing couldn't jump to the top, in the eyes of these bodyguards, she was already an unapproachable big shot. After warming up, it was time to get down to business. Shenren's body disappeared on the spot, then suddenly appeared in front of Fang Yan. Shenron struck with his palm. It was an ordinary palm. Fang Yan reached out to receive it, but it was too late. That palm pressed against his chest. The heart of Tai Chi spun naturally, and the chi in his body leaked out wildly. Then, it gathered at the chest that was about to be hit by Shenren's attack. Pa! That palm hit a transparent ball of light. It was like a firefly that was freed from a bottle cap. Starlight scattered in all directions, and Fang Yan's body was also sent flying out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Fang Yan, who was in the air, was still dizzy. He hadn't been able to react or adapt to the rhythm of the attack. Fang Yan's eyes were still watching the moment Shenron disappeared, but Shenron had already arrived in front of him. When Fang Yan saw Shenron coming to him, he had already struck with his palm. When Fang Yan saw the ordinary palm that the divine dragon had painstakingly unleashed, he raised his hand to block it. However, the palm was already about to land on his chest. If it wasn't for the heart of Tai Chi, which spun naturally when it was in danger, forming a protective ball of air in front of his chest, that stream of air would have blocked Shenren's palms, although in the end, they were smashed into pieces by Shenren's seemingly ordinary palm, but they still managed to protect Fang Yan's vital points and saved Fang Yan's life. Otherwise, who would be willing to suffer Shenren's palm for nothing? Fang Yan's body kept flying. He flew over Yi Ro's head, over the forest, over the boulders, and was about to fly out of the range of the mountain to the cliff where he missed his footing. Fang Yan knew the height of Feilai Peak. If he were to fall, he would definitely die. He forcefully gathered his chi and leaped into the air, taking large strides towards the peak of Feilai Peak. It looked like a celestial being sprinting in midair. Pa! Fang Yan's feet landed on the ground, and he felt a sweet taste in his throat as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fang Yan, are you all right? Yi Ro asked anxiously. Yi Ro was also a Heavenly Dao realm expert. She had also watched the duel from a close distance, so she could understand how miraculous Shenren's palm strike was. No, he didn't look miraculous at all. His disappearance was very ordinary, and so was his palm strike. There was no flying sand and rocks, nor was there any thunder or lightning. He had just struck out his palm in such an ordinary manner. However, there was no way to dodge or block it. Even if she were to deal with that palm strike, she would probably end up being sent flying, right? Is this the true strength of Shenron? Yi Ro thought worriedly. If that was the case, did Fang Yan really have a chance of winning? Fang Yan, Gongsun Chi had just shouted Fang Yan's name when he hurriedly shut his mouth. Fang Yan was his master's opponent. How could he be overly worried about him in a battle between the two of them? Your eyes are deceiving you, Shenron said in a deep voice as he looked at Fang Yan with great difficulty. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.